All right, we are live. We are live, and I'm coming at you with five. Welcome to another edition of Gavin Richard Presents here on channel GBoo2786 and also on my live stream through my YouTube channel, my self entitled YouTube channel, Gavin Richard, as well as the Facebook page. Those that are watching, whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're blessed and doing safe. We are getting started in a few minutes. I'm waiting for the judge to come in. I just texted him so I'm just waiting for him to come. Perhaps he hasn't had a chance to come on just yet. We got some people coming in. I'm going to use this time to also just take care of a little house cleaning business, guys. If you could please, you see the ticker at the bottom. If you can, please donate to the channel at Cash App, my Cash App, Gavin Richard Esquire, or Google Pay at gavin.grich1@gmail.com. That's my email as well. If you need to get in touch with me, we got some people in the chat right now. Peace. What's up, Southeast Dusty? We're going a lot. We're gonna try and get into today. Thank you for joining because we have on the Honorable Judge Joe Brown. So I'm just waiting for him uh, to come into the live stream. Let me know if there's any questions that y'all want to ask the judge when he gets in, because we got a lot we're going to try and cover. Of course, I want to talk about the just a whole bunch of things. But of course, we have the 2020 election that's coming up. We have the, with Biden trying to decide who's going to be his vice presidential candidate, COVID-19 pandemic that seems to be rearing up as well as with school starting. So that's a big issue that's coming up. But also what went down at the funeral of Congressman John Lewis and Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, and his comments about the late great Stokely Carmichael. I want to get the judge's take on that, and I'm sure it's very interesting. Judge Joe Brown is not a guy that holds his tongue. If you guys listen to him, he's all about that action and business. So uh, when you guys will hear, especially when we start the interview, how things are going. Let me see if I can reach the judge for a second. Just hold on. Let me take a little quick break. So. Okay, guys, I'm still waiting on the judge right now, so y'all can give me a minute just to let y'all know what was going on. Got seven people in the chat. We're getting. I had a question I want to ask everyone while we're waiting for the judge. What has it been like? Of course, there's a lot of topics I want to talk about. I don't know if the judge is going to pay attention to this one, but that incident that happened with. I had a question I want to ask everyone. Oh, excuse me. I'm looking at because I can't look at you. I'm had the Facebook channel on. Yeah, but I want to know what you guys' thoughts are. I didn't really want to give this fool any thought at all, but hold on one second. I wanted to put him in here, and I guess we could just talk about him while we're waiting for the judges. This asshole right here. Here it is. J.W. Lucas. Now, for you guys who probably, I guess I really didn't want to talk about him too much because I feel that we shouldn't give people like this any attention, especially when they talk about things that they don't know. But he made some disparaging remarks, obviously, about our late sister, Breonna Taylor, with regards to her death. And what he tweeted was here: why is the world asking for justice for Breonna Taylor? Of course, she shouldn't have lost her life, but do you realize that she was involved with multiple drug dealers who were using her house as a trap spot? If you sign up for that life, there are consequences. And rightfully so, he received backlash for that comment. Uh, you had Malika, is it Tamika Mallory, who came at him, and she went back and forth with him. Tariq Nasheed checked him, as well as Brother Rizza Islam. Shout out to all three of those individuals. And says here, Lucas quickly received backlash via social media for the disrespectful comment from the Justice for Breonna Taylor movement, which has launched because three members of the Louisville Metro Police Department responsible for her death, Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly and officers Brett Hanskin and Miles Cosgrove, have not been arrested. I believe one of those officers were already fired. The producer continued to share his thoughts on Taylor's murder in a series of follow-up tweets. It is terrible. Breonna lost her life. As I said earlier, I believe the cops may have mishandled the raid and been aggressive after being fired on. Lucas tweeted, with that being said, what is the punishment the world is calling for? Those men were on the job and have families as well. Well, Breonna Taylor had a family. And the fact of the matter is, first of all, he didn't know what he was talking about because this was a no-knock warrant. Uh, from my understanding of it, they did not knock and announce themselves that they had a warrant. They broke in, and the gentleman, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, his name keeps escaping me. I'm sorry, I don't know too much. I'm forgetful with stuff. But my understanding is that he opened, like any other concerned individual who lives at home and has a break-in, he opened fire. Kenneth Walker. Now, he opened fire because the door gets kicked in, and naturally, if it's late at night and someone kicks in your door, you're thinking you're about to get robbed. They don't announce themselves as police officers, so and even so, it's dead early in the morning. So naturally, while his girlfriend is asleep, if someone kicks in your door and you own a firearm, which is his legal right to, it is his legal right, you can shoot your firearm. You can defend yourself. Those police officers shot Breonna Taylor, even if they did not intend to, quote unquote, murder her. They are responsible for her death nonetheless. And at best, what you have is at worst, you have second-degree murder, and at best, you have criminal negligent homicide, reckless endangerment. Also, because after the shooting had stopped, they continued to open fire, my understanding, and those bullets, of course, traveled and went into other apartments. So J.W. Lucas, this gentleman, and I use that term very loosely, clearly didn't know what the hell he was talking about when he made these comments. I feel that he, of course, is nothing but an ignorant fool. And whoever works with him, in my understanding, is Tank tried to calm him down and work with him. It was complete bullshit. Nobody was falling for that. So he got his 15 minutes of fame, and I don't intend to give him any more. But Tariq Nasheed checked him, and if you saw the video, I'm gonna play the video though, just so you guys could see how Tariq checked this dude, as well as Rizza Islam, because he was explaining with this. But he goes on and on. I know that Nicole talked about it, but I'm gonna put it right here as well. Southeast Dusty says, didn't they state that they were at the wrong place, or am I correct? Also, her ex from 2 years ago was in jail already. I didn't know that was her ex. My understanding, though, is that there was they already had that individual in custody. That was my understanding of the case as well. The other thing too is that they, by them dropping the charges, keep in mind also Kenneth Walker, who opened fire on the police officer, the prosecutors dropped the charges against him, though without prejudice, because so that rarely happens in a police shooting. So there had to have been something dangerously wrong, egregiously wrong, that the cops did in order for them to do that, because prosecutors normally don't drop charges like that. Keep that in mind also. But he tries to explain that nothing I said was racist on his Instagram Live. You hear me speaking on white. Do you think I have any connection to my ancestry, to the color of my skin? Well, you're white. No, but anyway, no, I don't. It needs to be reform on policing. They should never go on in the house. I'm against rating, but these are the laws that are passed. Ain't no finishing me. But I want y'all to check. Okay, this dude, and Torian Rain pointed this out. When he was on the Instagram Live with Nicole. And I noted it as well, but you're going to see in this video. Let me stop this and let me share this one with you. Let's see. I'm still waiting. We're still waiting on the judge. What's up, Clay? All right. Now, if y'all can see that. Now, look. This dude is in the den of dark. And he's got a little black girlfriend or wife, but that doesn't mean anything. We know that there are people who like certain black people and can dislike all others. Look at what Bill Clinton did at John Lewis's funeral. You know, he basically threw shade at Stokely Carmichael, but praised John Lewis. Why? Because John Lewis, and I hate to say this, was not a threatening Negro, unlike Stokely Carmichael. Well, that's just the truth. There were people that prefer a black man who's on his knees, a black man who doesn't stand up versus a black man who's got guns and wants to go to war. They don't like a militant. You know, they use that term militant. They use that for the black man, like a Stokely Carmichael or Malcolm X. But notice they don't ever talk about militant white groups. They don't say that for white supremacist groups. They don't ever use that term militant. But I'm going to play this video. This is Tariq Nasheed versus Josh Lucas.
No, I said I point out Charlie Kirk.
Yo, what's up? How you doing? So man, let's get into what you're talking about, bro.
Now you appreciate you calling in as well.
Absolutely.
And I respect what you're doing. I'm a fan of your work too.
No doubt. But brother, you know what you said about Breonna was very disrespectful. You understand that, right?
I understand that I should have been a little more sensitive with the last part, but it was designed to start a conversation. I did say that under no circumstances did she ever deserve to lose her life. But if there was circumstantial evidence to where a warrant was signed and executed and police were fired on, there is special circumstances to this case, and I do believe the case being sensationalized for political purposes. And that's the nature of the test.
That's not what you said, bro.
That is exactly how I tweeted it. It was, and if anyone feels disrespected, and I spoke to Brown's sister today, and I apologize to her. And I said under no circumstances that I want this to take away from what's going on and the actual fight. This is to enable people coming forward and eradicating poverty, eradicating the real issues.
All right, so JW, why do you think you need to be a spokesperson for black people?
Because I feel that I have the fundamental understanding and the framework to bring real innovative ideas to the table.
All the while he's doing this in the dark. Now look, Tariq slided up, but this guy is all in the dark. Now, May not be a big issue, but it is an important issue because it's like he's hiding in shame. You see, he knew what he was doing when he tweeted that about Breonna Taylor. He knew exactly what he was doing, but I'm going to let the video play.
I understand the nature of reality. I understand the nature of reality. I understand
that black people don't have the fundamental understanding of reality.
I did not say that. I say I do not hear it when people are speaking about the cause. I've never heard anyone distinguish between cooperative and competitive games, and that's the issue we're having. This zero-sum economy, this system that's the problem.
You're veering off, brother. Right now,
no, I'm not. I'm not veering off. This is the cause. This is the exposure to police brutality, the exposure to poverty.
We're talking about you right now.
And I have a level of understanding that.
All right, y'all see how he's getting off subject? Y'all see how he's getting off subject? At least be man enough to stand by what you said, man. Don't get off subject and talk. You see, he's deflecting because he knows he's wrong.
That I have not seen in the game, and I look at everyone, including yourself.
So you think that you're more qualified to talk about black issues than black people?
Yes, sir. Based on my fundamental understanding of the nature of reality, the nature of reality. Yes, I say that with the utmost respect to you. I dedicate my life to this every day.
You just said that you're more qualified to speak for black people than us.
On the solutions. Let's talk.
All right, I never heard of this mother. Let me get this. Let me state this. I've never heard. I don't think most people never heard of who the hell of J.W. Lucas, and supposedly being a hip hop producer. Looked at what groups he's worked with: Lil Uzi and Pop. Who else? Pop Smoke and the Baby. He supposedly is their producer. Some people have they've renounced him already. Supposedly he's responsible for production on EXO Tour, Life, Lil Lift, Pop Smoke's The Woo, The Babies Can't Stop, and Jack Harlow's Was Poppin'. But there's a tweet that's been circulating around stating that Lucas didn't actually produce the record, and he thinks he is more qualified to talk about black issues because he's a hip hop producer.
No, we're talking about the actual ideas that are brought to the table.
What you want to do is
and we can list the ideas. We're having an intellectual conversation. Yeah. We're not disregarding that issue.
Would you have admitted that you're more qualified to talk about black issues than black
issues? Clarified that's based on my understanding of quantum physics. The actual. Let me speak. I clarified. Listen, let me explain. Let me explain.
You just admitted it. That
no, I did not. You're pinning that for your own individual gain. And that's
I just asked you, sir.
I began to clarify and let me speak. Listen,
black issues black people.
And I spoke to you. I clearly communicated. Let me tell you something. The reason why I agreed that yes, I am the most qualified to speak on it has nothing to do with my skin. That would be contradictory to the message that I'm bringing. Skin color is irrelevant. We're talking about ideas. We're talking about fundamental understanding of reality and having the framework to speak about innovative ideas.
You're babbling now, brother.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. You are babbling. You're not saying you're pointing a picture. No, there's no white supremacist ideology.
We should not let people who are not in our culture get in our culture.
I am in your culture. Didn't you just hear a childhood friend of mine say that I grew up with all blacks?
You're having a colonizer mentality. You say
no, I'm not.
A friend of mine said I grew up all around blacks. So he keeps putting his foot in his mouth further and further and further. Tell me, guys, do y'all want this man representing you?
Oh, I'm a colonizer who's talking about socialist economy and creating a non-zero-sum game. Does it seem like I'm trying to benefit my color? I'm talking about moving out of this colonization, out of this economy.
As a slave owner.
What? No, I'm trying to decrease ownership and increase equality, move into a truly socialist economy.
Your word to the mother. That is never impressive.
No, see that shit.
I got a quick question. I'm going to do a poll. How many of you think he has more than one tinfoil hat? Yes or no?
You got to bring ideas to the table. What is your idea? What can we do to eradicate poverty?
The same anti-black white supremacist racism as other white supremacists.
No, you have not. You've never heard anyone speak to you about cooperation and love and unity and low entropy. You don't even understand what entropy is, brother.
You're just saying random stuff.
No, I'm not. It's fundamental. It's what allows us to understand the passage of time. It describes our universe's expansion. It explains how we extract energy from heat. You need to be educated by me right now and quit putting up this facade for your personal gain, because I'm built for this. Let me help you be built for this.
Brother.
No, I'm not. I'm speaking about the nature of reality and the emergent systems. Having a fundamental. Do you understand the difference? Do you understand the difference between cooperative and competitive game theory?
Spokesperson for black people. What should black people do to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice?
Detach from the institutional narratives that are perpetuating the system, that are fed to black Americans through hip-hop culture that has been a prominent figure in the upbringing of black children since.
Okay, wait. How you gonna diss hip-hop culture when you produce hip-hop records? It's an oxymoron. Moron. You're a producer of some of the music that you're claiming is the problem for black people. You work in that community, you work in that environment. And yet you're gonna shame black people because they're not detached from it. Well, you gotta talk all of this game, but then on the same token, you're still getting paid off of our work. You're criticizing, you're biting the hand that feeds you. That's exactly what this is. So he just, Tariq spent 16 minutes on this guy. I don't even want to spend another minute with him, but I'm going to let it play just for a little bit longer because Tariq goes in on him about that.
The single parent rate skyrocketed with the liberal welfare system.
So hip-hop is the problem. That's what you're saying?
The narratives that are forced by the hip-hop gatekeepers are the problem. Like the narrative.
Who are the hip-hop gatekeepers?
You tell me. Who allows
They should know.
The narratives to be fed into hip-hop?
Who are the hip-hop gatekeepers?
Hip-hop, whoever, the people that speak about the narratives. Like the narrative that they need their rapper to be authentic. That they're not really living what they rap about. That is the narrative that perpetuates young men into believing that to have success in the music game, they gotta have street cred. They gotta have grit. They gotta be a consumer. That's what prevents black ownership and economic advancement. These narratives. Also, the narrative that fuck the bitch and send her home in an Uber pool. The narrative of running through women without responsibility is what's skyrocketing in the single parent rate. Are you aware of the single parent? Are you aware of the single parent rate in America? And then there's a problem.
You're a hip hop producer, right?
Yes, sir.
Why do you produce music like that?
Because I grew up listening to it, and I'm fascinated by hip hop music.
So it's a problem, but you grow up listening to it, and you still want to finance it.
And at the same time, I speak out actively every day about detaching from the narrative. You ask me what type of ideas I had, and I begin to drop gems as I always do. Because that's what I do every day. Because I'm a clumsy motherfucker. I drop gems all day. I need you to catch them so we can fucking eradicate these problems. so we can really progress.
About black destruction, and then you're
No, that is the opposite. I'm speaking out about the narratives that are being fed through hip hop to kids.
But you produce music like that. You produce that kind of music.
No, I make instrumental music. And artists has the freedom of speech to say whatever they want, and hip hop should not be the father of kids. It's been politicized, and for political purposes. The combination of the single parent rate skyrocketed to 72%, and the prominent.
Listen,
Yes,
70% of the music buyers are white people in your community. Why is it that your community likes to perpetuate anti-black narratives?
That's fallacy to speak on, because we know what type of music that black culture loves to listen to too. You're assuming that it's white kids that want to see black people doing it, this and that. That's inaccurate. We all have imagination today.
No, it's not inaccurate. In fact, what Tariq is saying is spot on. If you think about this logically, black people only make up 12.5% of this country's population. This population is around 350 million Americans, documented and undocumented, I guess you could say. I think that's more documented. But 350 million Americans that live in this country, 350 million people. So if you take 12.5% of that, that's roughly, around 40 million people. I'm just saying, give or take a million or so. 43,750,000. So 750,000. So we are not the biggest consumers, and there's more white people in this country, about 60% or better. So I'm just throwing out numbers, but they are the majority in this country. So give or take so even if you give or take a million or so, black people are not the biggest, although we produce all of that music and we create that music. There are actually going to be more white people that are going to listen to that music. You know, the biggest consumers of Motown, of R&B, have always been whites. The biggest consumers of rap music. I remember when Public Enemy was big back in the 90s, and Public Enemy had a very large white following. You know, when you looked at their concerts back then, it was nothing but white kids that were out there. Ice-T was the same way. NWA as well. So what he's saying, makes zero sense.
Danger. We have a fascination to live fast and dying young.
So you're just saying anything like this.
No, I'm dropping gems on you. I need you to catch them. Yes, I am speaking. What wasn't factual about what I just said?
I just told you, but there's proof that 70% of the hip hop buyers are white people. White people buy more hip hop than everybody.
And would you not say that hip hop has been a blessing for young black men, specifically in America, to advance economically? And that consumerism allows for economic advancement in that sense.
Now, how does this tie into eradicating systematic white supremacy?
By detaching from the narratives that perpetuate the system, the zero-sum game that we're in, where the rich get rich and the poor get poor.
That doesn't mean anything. Those are random words.
No, they're not random. You're just not aware of the meaning, brother.
No,
you want me to explain any of the meaning? We're just saying you need help with understanding. And this ain't no spinning it like I don't think you're capable. Because I ain't no fucking self-hating bigot with low expectations of my black peers. I ain't no self-hating bigot. I expect you to be capable of that.
I think you're just a fucking idiot. Y'all, I'm not gonna keep playing this any further, guys. I think y'all have got the impression of it. He put his foot in his mouth, not even within 5 minutes of the video. But I think he keeps going back and forth and babbling, and basically got caught, because he contradicted himself multiple times. So, having said all of that, we are still waiting for the judge. Guys, if you give me one more second and we will get started. Hold on one second. Yeah, guys, I'm back. We're still no word from the judge just yet. So but we'll just turn this into. I apologize, guys, for this, but we'll just go ahead. We'll keep going with this. So, just another thing I wanted to bring up. Of course, you guys are familiar with what happened with, obviously, with other news with Stokely Carmichael and Bill Clinton. And I did a video on this earlier, but I wanted to talk about it again, obviously, because it's starting to make rounds across the media. With what happened, different people. There was an op-ed that was in the Washington Post, actually about Bill Clinton's comments, and this was actually written by uh, Kwame Jeffries. I hate when these ads come up. So I'm trying to actually pull it up, and I'm not. They want you to buy stuff. You get a lot of that now because I think this. Well, I don't think this is how they make their monies now because people don't buy news in print anymore, not as much as they used to. And so we're gonna go in here. I'm actually trying to share this right now with you all. Hold on one second. Lord knows I do not like the Root at all, but they're the only ones right now that I can pull up on the screen and you guys can actually look at. But what I was saying was Kwame Jeffries actually wrote a very interesting op-ed earlier this morning about how Stokely Carmichael didn't need to be shaded by Bill Clinton, crimes Bill Clinton, as I call him. And black people in general, I'm just saying this, and I think more of us are starting to wake up about how we've been uh, treated by the political parties. And Stokely Carmichael in the 1960s, he actually was dissuaded by the two-party dictatorship in the United States. He didn't believe in voting, Republican or Democrat because he felt that the Republicans, while they didn't take us seriously, the Democrats also took us for granted. And you know what Jeffrey said, and I'm able to pull it up on my phone. I'm going to read this to you. Hassan Kwame Jeffries, who's an associate professor of history at Ohio State University. He's the author of Bloody Lounge, Civil Rights and Black Power in Alabama's Black Belt. He says, I enjoy a good funeral. When you grow up in the Black Baptist church, you learn to appreciate a homegoing that strikes the right balance between celebrating a life well lived and mourning a loss. Okay? And Jeffries goes further. So, okay, hold up. So now I can't even pull this up. I'll be damned. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I can't pull it up, actually. I thought I did, but it hit me with that subscribe button, too, on the phone. So, what you read here on the Root, they say on Thursday, during a funeral for civil rights messiah John Lewis, former President Bill Clinton fixed his crime bill ass mouth to say that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee lost its way under Stokely Carmichael, who later changed his name to Kwame Ture. Clinton started off strong, noting that Lewis' posthumous op-ed in the New York Times was just like Lewis. He never lost heart. He fought the good fight. He kept the faith, Clinton said. It's so fitting on this day of his service. He leaves our marching orders. Keep moving. But then Clinton had to say this bullshit. Just 3 years later, he lost the leadership of SNCC to Stokely Carmichael because it was a pretty good job for a guy that young and came from Troy, Alabama. It must have been painful to lose, but he showed as a young man there's some things you just cannot do to hang on to a position, because if you do, then you won't be who you are anymore. And I say there were 2 or 3 years there where the movement went a little too forwards towards Stokely, but in the end, John Lewis prevailed. And a lot of people caught it.
And I say there were 2 or 3 years there where the movement went a little bit too far towards Stokely, but in the end, John Lewis prevailed.
And so that was the actual, I don't know if you guys heard that audio because it came from Twitter. You probably didn't, because I ended up clicking on the link. But Stokely, he basically made those comments, and from you seeing a lot of people clap back. And it hasn't been, I think, since the Arsenio Hall appearance by, I'm going to turn this off now, by Bill Clinton, where he played that saxophone. And he talked about how, he played that saxophone on Arsenio when he was running for re-election. And I remember watching that. And my parents were all amazed. Everybody was clapping. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We get so caught up in so much symbolism that it hurts us. Okay, he plays the saxophone. We've never gotten over, there are people that have never gotten over that. So what if he plays the saxophone? What was his policies? Bill Clinton enacted some of the worst policies that hurt black people in this country. One of them is I'm not even looking at the crimes bill. I look at the telecommunications bill of 1996. Do you know what that did to, and Joe Biden approved that as well. But of course, in several other senators, it wasn't just him, but nevertheless, he supported that. But that Telecommunications Act of 1996 decimated black radio. Have you noticed on your local R&B stations, which are now affiliates to major radio talk show hosts, major radio programs, haven't y'all noticed a change where you don't get the programs typically from the local DJ in the last 30 years, 20 years? Here in New Orleans, do you know that Sunday Journal with Hal Clark, that show was taken off the air? There were real serious issues that they talked about. Real serious issues, and now we don't hear much more about those. Everything is a damn entertainment show. And I'm not saying there's no room for entertainment, but everything's gonna be jokes and so forth. I'm listening to Steve Harvey when I was driving up Saturday. I was going to the gun range. I shoot guns, and they didn't make any reference to this. But they talked about how, oh yeah, Bill Clinton was presidential. Yeah, waiting for President Obama. Yeah, yeah. And we still haven't gotten over we still have not gotten over our past president. We still haven't gotten over, most of us, especially, and you notice it's mostly these older Negroes who are into all of that. The young people aren't feeling it anymore. We still haven't gotten over the fact that the Democratic Party, and I'm not a Republican at all either. This is not me supporting Donald Trump. This is not me supporting the Republican Party, but We've never asked the Democratic Party, or we have not gotten anything out of their party in the last, I want to say 50 years. No tangibles, nothing. They think that they can just show up and shame you into voting and talking about what our ancestors did. And all they have to do is play a saxophone, or all they have to do is show up on a radio show with hot sauce, and pander. Jim Claiborne called Joe Biden a black president. He called him an honorary black man, if I'm not mistaken. Joe Biden, I'm not even looking at the crimes bill that he authored, but also looking at the men that were responsible for creating Joe Biden. And this is fact. You can go look it up. I don't have to lie to you. But he hung around Joe Stennis and Roy Arbus and Strom Thurmond. These were some of the staunchest segregationists at that time. Let's not forget, though, but keeping it on Bill Clinton, remember when Obama was running for President Obama was running, he was a senator at that time. When he was running for president, I'll never forget Bill Clinton making a comment that 30 years ago, he said Obama would have just been carrying our bags. I remember that shit. And it was Toni Morrison, if I'm not mistaken, that gave Bill Clinton that title of the first black president. I remember Chris Tucker joking about it on, and Paul Mooney. Those guys would be joking about that. He said Obama would have been good enough to carry out bags. I remember that shit. That was back in 2008 when he was running. And his wife couldn't cut the mustard. She wasn't a good candidate to begin with. That's why nobody voted for her ass. Young voters, the young people, I'm just saying this, Joe Biden doesn't really jump out to the young voters. He doesn't jump out to young black men because he's not doing anything for them. I know a lot of people who say they're not excited about so much him being president, but of course, the old adage is that, well, we don't want Trump. We don't want the Republican. But I'm sick of that. You have to give people, it's not just enough to tell people to go vote because Dr. King fought for you to have the right to vote, or Medgar Evers, or whatever ancestor that says that. Our ancestors also fought for us for the right to be independent. They fought for us to think for themselves. My ancestors, they didn't fight to be somebody's bitch either. I'm going to show this article right here.
Convince you of something that isn't actually.
Our brother, Professor Black Truth, actually was talking about this on his show yesterday. I won't post his video out of respect to him, but he was going over the topic about Biden and so forth, and how Biden hadn't picked a candidate, a vice presidential candidate as of yet. Personally, I don't know. I don't think by him committing, and hear me out, and I know some people may not like this, but I was talking about this with my girlfriend the other day. By him committing that he's going to already have a female president, a female vice president, I think he shot himself in the foot with that to begin with, because There are people. What's up, Ajike? How you doing, sweetie? Southeast Dusty says they're saying anyone but Trump, which is truly sad and lazy. Yes, it is sad and lazy. Because what are you giving the people in return? When we just put someone in, anybody but the other guy, what you're essentially saying is that you don't care which way your country goes. You don't care about yourself. Oh, I'm just going to take this guy. But you're not getting anything out of it from your vote. Joe Biden has made it clear from what I've listened to in his speeches and statements that his number one priority, he even said this, was LGBT issues. That's his top priority. He has not said anything as regards to tangibles. When asked about reparations by Ed Gordon, I know he said, well, it depends on whether we can do it and whether the Native Americans can do it. The Native Americans already got that. And he should know because under his time as vice president, he was a part of that too. The Obama administration gave dozens of tangibles to the Native American communities. They approved, I believe, a $500 million lawsuit settlement to Native American groups. So let us not be fooled. And honestly, you know why the VP pick is important is because you know what's going to happen if Biden by chance gets elected. Biden, I don't think, is going to serve the full term of his office. I think Joe Biden is older than Donald Trump. And probably he wouldn't be medically fit. And so the vice presidential nominee, who will be a woman, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's going to be Kamala Harris. Okay, let's just say her. Well, realistically, do you think if they weren't happy with a black man as president, do you think they would be happy with a black woman like Kamala Harris, who they don't, who when she was even an attorney general of California, there were issues with her. I can show you how hypocritical many of these groups and movements are, like the voting process and like Democratic National Convention and the Democratic nominees are. Remember, Kamala Harris is attacked Joe Biden over his issues with his comments with regards to forced desegregated busing. Remember that? Hold on. So Kamala Harris tweeted today, if Donald Trump is reelected, the damage he has done may be irreparable. In 93 days, we must vote Joe Biden. So this is what she put up earlier today. But remember, okay, she tweeted this. Now, I think it's clear that she is just trying to get that VP spot. But remember this.
"2020 presidential candidates Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are rehashing a decades-old debate about busing as a means to integrate public schools. It started with a back and forth between the former vice president and the California senator during the first 2020 Democratic primary debate. Harris went after Biden for his record on busing during his time serving as a senator in the 1970s.
Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America? Then, do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I oppose.
Well,
I
there's
did
a
not
failure of states to integrate public schools in America.
At the time, Biden generally did not support busing, while he still prided himself as a champion of civil rights.
I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to Black Americans in my own city.
But following his debate clash with Harris, he clarified that he supported voluntary or court-mandated busing in specific cases, while he opposed involuntary busing.
I never opposed voluntary busing. Number one, I was for busing where the court showed that, in fact, a legislative body took an action preventing Black folks from going to a school. That is the jure, I know you know, the jure segregation. The difficult piece is, this is 50 years ago, people don't understand the context. The third one is, do you have an administration through their non-elected officials, the Department of Housing, decide every school should be equally balanced across the board?
Meanwhile, Harris has been very clear that she supported busing as mandated by the federal government in the 70s. And for her, the debate is very personal.
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
However, her position on busing now is less clear.
Busing is a tool among many that should be considered when we address the issue, which is a very current issue as well as a past issue, of desegregation in American schools. So I think of busing as being in the toolbox of what is available and what can be used for the goal of desegregating American schools.
Wishy-washy. And you see all of this for a job that only pays $200,000 a year. All the money, $250,000, excuse me. All of the money that is raised in a campaign. You have presidential nominees that are able to raise $60 million just to become the next president. And I remember Jesse Ventura even talking about why he would never run for president, and his statement was very simple. I would never spend any money on something that would cost more than what the job is worth. Although I probably would vote for Jesse Ventura if he did run. That's just me. But of course, this article was from Yahoo News. Young voters are not feeling, young Black voters say they aren't enthusiastic about a Joe Biden presidency. I know you guys were waiting for, let me just clarify. I don't know what happened with the judge. I don't know if he got caught up or something. I've tried to reach out to him, so he has not appeared right now. So I apologize to all of those that were waiting. But I just wanted to, we just going to go in and talk about what I was going to discuss here. It says Perry Green doesn't believe that Joe Biden is listening to what young Black Americans want right now. She says, and I quote, across the country, young people are protesting systemic racism and calling on political leaders to reallocate funding from local police to other community resources. Green, who is Black, criticized Biden for not supporting the defund police movement that many activists support. You got Black youth across the country calling for defunding the police and thinking differently about law enforcement. And a couple of days later, in the midst of all protests, Biden's campaign says, let's spend more money on community policing. Green, 34, lives in Alameda, California, and says she's still undecided on whether he will vote for Biden after supporting Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. But he added if he was living in a swing state like Ohio, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, he will be voting for Biden. Now, I don't live in a swing state. Louisiana is full red. Of course, there are more Democrats than there are Republicans here, just about. But we have the blue dog Democrats, the conservative Democrats, and believe it or not, there are people that they like the way that the country is going. There are some people, at least, who like the way the direction the country is going with Trump. As hard as that is to believe, there are people like that. With the November election 4 months away, polling shows Biden support with younger black voters trailing significantly behind than that of older black voters. And while polls show the majority of young black voters support Biden over President Trump, many are unenthusiastic at best or hesitant at worst. Black voters vote of all ages have been a pillar of the Democratic Party's coalition for decades. A strong turnout from the black community, particularly in key battleground states such as Michigan and Florida, will be key for Biden to take the White House in November. Well, what I think this is, it just shows you the different age gap between the difference in the age gap between the young voters and the older voters, and that is because the younger voters are disillusioned. We are, well, excuse me, let me rephrase that. I think that the older voters, in particular, are disillusioned because, and this from reality when it comes to how the young black voters or young people in this country, I shouldn't just say voters, but young black people feel in this country. For all that time that they have talked about voting and how black people should go out and vote in droves because that's how you're going to affect change. Well, we put in our first black president who had 8 years, and under President Obama, and keep in mind also the first couple of years that he had a all Democratic Congress, there was no tangibles that was given to the black community. Yes, he created, I know people will say my brother's keeper initiative and so forth, but that applied to quote minority, that was a form of a minority program. And there were even some issues with that, with getting the right fundings and so forth and the right organizations to support that. The other issue was, in minority, of course, is a code term that can be, and people of color are not distinctive terms as it relates to black people, because of course, if you are a minority, for instance, if you are a Jewish white lesbian, you could classify as a minority. If you are a Hispanic male, you classify as a minority. The same thing as Asian, Arab, Lebanese, Vietnamese, whatever, that classifies as a person of color and a minority. And black people have been cut off for years from gaining economic access. We don't control majority, banks in our communities. We don't control land. And a large part of that had to do with systemic racism, of course, because it was these banking cartels, these banking systems that determined what were, especially based off your zip code, where you live, what areas were deemed to be a risk and not to give monies from certain black-owned businesses to give back to their communities, in particular to set up a business and so forth. However, other groups of people who do not look like us were able to get, their businesses placed, dabbed in our communities and take millions of dollars away from us. And they give that back and circulate it in their own communities and their countries. So the young black people in this country are dissatisfied because all their lives they have been told things from the older civil rights generation about voting and how important it is and how our ancestors fought for the right to vote, which no one denies that, yes, our ancestors fought for the right to vote, but they were also fighting for the right to be independent, the right to think, the right to own land, the right even to reparations, because let us not forget, it was a presidential order by, as well as a military order from, excuse me, not presidential, but a military order from William T. Sherman that and when he after and during the Civil War, where they made the promise of the 40 acres and the mule, and of course that was taken away by President Andrew Johnson. And Andrew Johnson, of course, was a favorite for the after Lincoln's assassination. He did very little to protect black civil rights. He nullified that special order, Field Order number 15, as well as the Freedmen's Bureau bills. He reversed and pulled those. The only thing Andrew Johnson did was actually, during his presidency, was actually get the state of Alaska. This is what he's actually known for. To try to get that into the American Union. Of course, Alaska wouldn't become a state until years after Johnson was deceased, but that was he was acquitted in the Senate by one vote. And actually, I just got a text message, guys. Judge Joe Brown is on the way. So after 50 minutes, but his main accomplishment was the Alaskan Purchase. And of course, we had to deal with he's listed as one of the worst presidents in American history. That was Special Field Order number 15. You guys can look that up. But that was a proclamation by William Tecumseh Sherman on January 16, 1865, during the American Civil War, to allot land to some freed families in plots of land no larger than 40 acres. Sherman later ordered the army to lend mules for the agrarian reform effort. So, give me 1 second, guys. I got somebody at my door. Hold on. What you doing? Sorry about that, guys. So, we're gonna, since Judge is right on time with it. I know he was running a little bit late. Nothing but facts. Yes, it is facts. We're gonna talk about Biden too, since we got this up. So I'm waiting for the judge to come in on the link, and we'll get started in a little bit. But I'm sure he's gonna have some interesting stuff to say about that. But give us another 30 about, let's see, I don't know what time he's coming in, but give me about a few minutes, guys. Let me take a quick little break, and we will get back and get started. Let me stop this. Hold on. Hey, what's going on, Judge?
Yeah, excuse me. My housekeeper was over here, and I was being chastised for letting some stuff build up while she was on vacation. She also happens to be my sister, so I had to put up with it.
All right, it's all good. Welcome to the program, Judge Joe Brown.
I got a fine looking sister.
How you do?
Oh, yeah, let me show you a picture. Uh, mm,
Oh, yeah, she is cute.
yeah, well, she's 55, so she's up there.
That's your sister?
Yeah, that's my actual sister.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, I ain't into playing Pharaoh shit,
No. Yeah, she's married.
Yeah, she's a married lady, got 3 kids. Hell.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
All right, what can we do for today?
Well, Judge, I've just been talking a little bit with everyone. Well, first off, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. And everybody say shout out to the judge who's in the chat right now. We got about 6 people that are watching. We'll have more in. But we were just talking about various stuff, Judge. The one thing I just left off was about Joe Biden. This article was from July 9th that I'll share with everyone. But they're saying that he has black voters, especially young black voters, are unenthused with voting for Joe Biden. And I know
They ought to be. He's a racist dog.
Yeah. But a lot of people, but there's some people.
Seriously, a racist dog. He's the worst kind. He's from Delaware, which you have to understand was a slave-holding state. And back in the 60s, when he was campaigning for state offices in Delaware, he used to say he was disturbed and disappointed that Delaware had not gone with the South since it was a slave-holding state. He talked stuff like he knew how the Negro thought, and then he said Negroes were animals, and if they were allowed to integrate to schools, that would turn them into zoos. And then he reiterated that back in the 70s, and then he had Strom Thurmond and Faubus and George Wallace and that racist John B. Stennis campaigning for him when he was running for the state office. So, he's been a racist from a long time back. And in the 70s, I saw this live. It was on something that was a precursor of C-SPAN. And I was the public defender for the city of Memphis. So I was sitting in my office looking at a small TV. And he was on having a fit for that bunch, talking about they were his heroes, role models, mentors. And he promised to dedicate the rest of his professional career to following in their footsteps. And then he was reiterating that thing, I think it was 1977, something like that, about Negroes made schools zoos because they were animals and that kind of thing. So he's been a racist dog. And they talk about 1994, the Crime Control Act, but let's talk about the one 15 years before that, 1979, 1980, when he was a co-sponsor of this thing to remove probation and parole from federal sentencing so that you had to serve the whole full term, no parole, no probation for anything except certain minor offenses for youthful offenders. And he started that thing not in 1994, but back in 1980 rather. That's 40 years ago, where for 10 rocks, you'd get the equivalent sentence for having basically a pure kilo of powdered coke.
Mm.
So, I mean, he's never been a friend of the people. It's always been a low down dog.
Why did
And
he?
he's a back burner, and he comes from the smallest state in the union. Delaware is so small, they don't even have an airport. You have to land in Philly and take ground transport. And the state capitol is literally a medium-sized two-story building that's 200 some years old. The floor sags, and there's a little stunt everybody does, put some marble on one wall, and it'll roll to the middle where it's sagged down. And it's a wrap trap thing where when you walk across it, it squeaks. And that's the state capitol. And it's literally, I was back there again about 25 years ago. I was in much better health, and I literally ran across the entire state. It was 9 miles across from one border to the other.
Yeah. So why did he
Little
become?
bitty place.
So why was he picked as? Why was he Obama's vice president?
Obama's the same kind of low down dog too. I know that'll offend people, but I always said it reminded me of those fake black folk back in the 60s who you never could get to come to a BSU meeting, and when it was time to do something, they punked out. And even though, well, they do this, brother, it's not that I don't appreciate what all of you have done for me. I wouldn't be in here without you, but I can't afford to jeopardize my career, so you'll have to go on without me, but I'll be there in spirit. And then in later years, they'd put down all of this BSU stuff on their resumes to give themselves some credibility. And one in particular I know used to consult with President Bill Clinton, and he wasn't anything but a punk. Whole family were a bunch of punks.
Bill
He
Clinton.
owed him an ass whipping until he died, but he died 10 years ago, so I guess he escaped the ass whipping. But anyway, Obama always reminded me of that kind of sneaky snake. And it turns out he's a little rich boy. In fact, he is a member of one of the 15 richest families on earth. His adopted daddy, Lolo Sotoro, was somebody who was wanted on warrant by The Hague for crimes against humanity, to wit, mass murder. They alleged that he was responsible for killing between 500,000 and 300 and 750,000 people, 750,000. He ran the death squads for Indonesia back 1959, 60, 61, and he did contract work for the U.S. CIA during the Vietnam War in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and the Nam. So he was also international executive vice president for Standard Oil. Nice that an American company is hooked up with a mass murderer, but they were, and they wanted to get into the oil reserves of Indonesia, so they set him up, and with his death squads, he could do anything he wanted to do. So he owned his own oil company, which is one of the world's largest still. And Obama Tang gets 1/3 the income from that, split with his two half siblings. So he was very friendly with the Bushes. And as a matter of fact, he and his mama are, well, in her case, were, since he's dead, cousins to the Bushes. So interesting family relationships. George and Herbert Walker Bush and George Walker Bush and Barry Soetoro / Barack Obama and his mama, along with Dick Cheney, Warren Buffett, and the actor Brad Pitt are all cousins. Ain't that
I saw something like that. Yeah, they were saying how.
And see, the richest president to ever be in the White House is not Donald Trump. It's Barack Obama. And he started taking his draw from his trust fund for the first time. And Business Insider reported his net income for 2018 after taxes and all expenses was $570 million on a draw, with other income of $1.25 billion for 2018. And that was the boy that everybody thought was one of us. a charlatan. The only damn thing he did, just like the late, not lamented, departed John Lewis, was do stuff for the LGBT queer crowd. And speaking of which, you can see what he was doing when the funeral procession did a stop.
Judge, are you there?
Through. Can't stop these folk from doing this. And if I shut this thing off, I lose it. But I'm on an iPad going through a cell phone.
Oh, I see.
But in any event, they stopped at the LGBTQ queer headquarters, wherever they were, so that they could give him honor because of so much he had done for the LGBT queer community. And then the Jewish community gave him this outstanding commemoration and honorary posthumous Israeli citizenship for all he had done for them, but he didn't do a damn thing for black folk, not once.
Now this is
No
John Lewis talking about, right?
Sorry waste of time for his constituents and for black people in general. Just like the Black Caucus, it ought to be called the Gay Black Caucus or Black Gay Caucus instead of Black Caucus, because they don't do any damn thing except for Israel and LGBT queer. Now that's okay for them to work the politics, but these clowns depend upon the black vote to get in office and don't deliver for the black constituents they have. So I get mad at stuff like that. And John Lewis, I don't look at as a hero. I always thought was an embarrassment because he was too gay. And it was an embarrassment extremely to most black folk back then to see somebody down on his knees with some rednecks beating the crap out of him while he's sitting there praying and doing nothing. See, my generation, when all this was going on, you can't blame the boomers. The first of us were born in 1946. I was born in 47. So the oldest of us, when this stuff started hitting the fan in the mid-50s, were about 10 years old. I was 9. And I know my father, which was 2 generations before that, he was in World War II, and he and some of his vet buddies and other guys that had been in the Korean War said, I'll be damned if I've been shot at by enemy and return fire and risk death if I'm going to let some fool redneck beat me across the head. They can go to hell. And the other thing about the whole damn civil rights movement was they had too many gay folk in it, and everybody then talking about, those people that have those kind of habits, it wasn't even mentioned, well, what are you talking about, Dad? Well, I'll explain to you later, son, but a man can't be around them. They have too much girl in them. And then what's his name? Bayard
Rustin? Yeah, Bayard Rustin.
Move a foot now to get the governor of California to posthumously pardon him because out in the Los Angeles area, he got busted in the back seat of one of those big 1960s type cars, getting screwed in his anus by some white guy while he was sucking some other white guy's dick. So they busted him for the usual charges, but all of the black kids in college and everything, they got busted for the same thing, normal style in the back seat of a car that don't get posthumously or currently pardoned while they're still alive. The hell with him. He's just a damn queer boy with no respect. And he was a tool of the white folk, and he was King's right hand, whatever he was. And he did a lot to ruin what the civil rights movement was about because nobody straight wanted to have a damn thing to do with it.
Judge, wasn't he an agent?
South, where the preachers coerced all of these church-going Negroes into getting involved.
Was he an agent?
Like right now, history is recording what's going on now is the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I'll be damned if it's got much to do with black folk. It's mostly black lesbians or bitch lesbian mania BLM, and if you read that mantra, you've read it, you know what it says. What is the
Yeah.
first, third thing from the bottom? We are a queer affirming network. And then they go through, they want to destroy the traditional family, black manhood, and promote their tranny freaks and all of the rest of that crap. And see, I don't buy this drag queen crap. That's just ridiculous. Mother Nature spent 3.8 billion, 4.0 billion years trying to set it up so boys and girls, you know, they have different plumages, different tail feathers, different feather colors or manes, or they're bigger, or they have deeper sounds they make, or they're bigger in size. Sexual dimorphism. So humans, since we don't run around naked, you know, the clothes kind of reflect what's underneath. So you got these drag queens trying to disrupt the flow and masquerade with something else, and then a lot of them get killed when somebody takes them home and realizes what's happening. Then they go temporarily crazy and take them out, and they're trying to confuse the issue. See, they're into this thing of being homosexuals. That's their business. But if you can use this corruption of the word gender and start acclimating people to taking it as something different from sex, and then start saying there are things like 58 genders. Well, if you change the two genders, male and female, to something that is just a cloud, then that takes away the onus for them being homosexual instead of heterosexual. So they've been pushing that. It's a propaganda thing, and it's their business. I mean, they can do what they want to do in their bedrooms just like the rest of us. But when some of them start trying to make it a lifestyle that they're pushing on the whole country, and instead of confining it to their bedrooms, trying to kick in the door to your living room so they can sit on the couch across from you and do what they do, and your children and grandchildren may be in there, then hell, that's where you draw the line. That's just like politics. It's like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They're wide open to being jumped on, and you can talk about them, push back and attack all you want. So if they want to have their gay party, LGBT queer, then they're subject to getting pushed back on. And by the way, I say queer freely, do it without fear, because they can't cut you off for taking their own word. Because if you go to their site, the Q stands for questioning and queer. And if you go to BLM, they call themselves queer affirming. So I guess they're queer too. So you can see BLM queer and LGBT queer. And if you want to say something about black, then try BFM, Black Folk Matter, Black Families Matter, Black Fathers Matter, Black Finance Matters, Black
lawyers
matters. Yeah, all kinds of things you can do, and you get away from that. Well, all lives matter, like, oh, hell, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Black Lives Matter as much as any, but then Black Lives Matter is corrupted into Black Lesbians Matter, and they're raising a whole lot of money. And if you give them one damn dime, you will find out that it's equally split between LGBT queer and something called Act Blue, which is a Democratic Party front, and they even disclose how much they pay to each candidate. Now, I've seen pictures of federal office buildings with BLM flags, banners hung from them, and general counsel talking about that's not a political organization. Like the hell it ain't. If they're raising money for specific political candidates, which they list, that matches that 1934 Hatch Act definition of political activity, which makes it a crime to try and have anybody who is working for a governmental entity that receives federal money. And I'll be damned if a federal office building isn't getting federal money, or the city of Washington, D.C. isn't getting federal money, or New York is not getting federal money. And they've got folk out there working for the cities, both cities, or for the federal government, putting out BLM banners, which are raising funds to pay these lesbians that founded it 4 of them, one of whom's got a white dyke for a wife, and they're paying each other $250,000 a year and raising. I think they've raised $184 million so far to put into gay causes. And tell me if that's not, damn it, political activity. And it's gay causes, not black causes. There's a great distinction. It's bait and switch.
Right. I do want to get back with the John Lewis thing for a second, but I got a question for you. Are there any black civil rights organizations like you admire? Because I don't see it too much. Like even the NAACP is falling off.
Well, yeah. See, I'm a lifetime member of the NAACP, so I guess I can't undo that. But, you know, I know 1 or 2 chapter presidents, around 3 or 4 chapters, maybe 5, that are actually trying to do something. There's some in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. And well, not Northern California, it's Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. And the ones in Oregon and Washington have a particular concern because they're actually lynching black people there and hanging them from trees in the forest with signs around their neck or pinned to their shirts about why they got hung. And that's hooked up with these white folk who want to have or trying to get the U.S. government to donate a certain tract of land just to pure white Aryan people, that Nazi thing again. And I have seen some documentation of this that I was shown face to face. And I've been searching for 3 years, and I have yet to find one mention on social media or from the mainstream media. So that is happening, and they tend to be relevant because they've got a real challenge. And I know one sister, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, who runs a chapter out of Long Beach, California, that's doing some good things. So that's just got to do with the dynamics of the leadership involved. She's an up-and-coming sister. She's a clinical psychologist. She's actually a writer. And as a matter of fact, Google's top 20 books has her at the top of the list. I got the book autographed. I know her. She's a good friend, and I've had it for 3 years. Actually, it's pretty good. Well written, it's easy read. I read the whole thing in one night.
What's her name? What's her name?
Dr. Cheyenne Bryant.
Okay.
Now, again, pictures worth 1,000 words, brothers. She's good to look at. Let me see if I can find her. Yes. She is on time.
Okay. Oh,
wait a minute, hold on.
Got slid.
I lost it.
Yeah, I think you slid it over. There you go. Oh yeah.
Now get this lady's book and learn something.
And what's the title of the book?
Yeah, I forgot. It's been a while. Hold on.
All right, that's okay. We can find it.
She did something interesting, and well, I had her on the show. That's me from back when I didn't shave my hair. But
yeah,
we have a book club. So that's done with Valerie Denise Jones is the producer. We do it every Friday, and you can catch it on Spotify. But she's got a great book. And one thing she did, which I thought was interesting, she got the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department out at a function. And he gave a public pledge that henceforth, LAPD was pledging that it would not be involved in any of the things that resulted in the death of Mr. Floyd. And if you grew up in Los Angeles like I did, that's something getting LAPD to even acknowledge that you exist.
Yeah. And Daryl Gates was the biggest promoter of stuff like that, huh?
Well, Daryl Gates wasn't it. It was Chief Parker.
Okay.
See, when I was a kid in Los Angeles, LAPD was known for corruption and control by the mob. So to change this, they decided to get somebody who would be above reproach, and they would give him a lifetime appointment, like he was a U.S. Supreme Court justice or a federal judge. His name was Parker, and they brought him in from Alabama. And see, at that time, Los Angeles had a long history of racism, a very bad history. And if you go to Los Angeles now, you'll see these mountains, but you have to realize most of LA is on the other side of those mountains. What's on the other side is called the San Fernando Valley, where you get the term Valley Girl from. So they could always vote in the mayoral election. So the people who lived in the valley didn't like the fact that there were so many colored folk in the basin, which included Asians, black folk, Mexicans, and Jewish folk. So in the early 50s and late 40s, a lot of people moved out of the Ozarks from Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, etc. And they went to California and settled in Los Angeles because of the aerospace industry. So what happened is once Parker got in and cleaned up the department, the police started running City Hall instead of City Hall running the police. And there is a famous incident where 3 detectives went to City Hall, went to the elected DA and hung him out of the 28th floor window and threatened to drop him if he didn't do what they told him to do. They had that much power and they got away with it.
This was in
LAPD was known. We used to have a joke. Hey man, like what happened? You heard about Earl, man? No, man, we was out, man, and LAPD stopped us, man. We got out the car, hands up, and this dude said, "Hey, wish to see your papers, please." Hey man, what you talking about papers? We wish to see your papers. Man, what you talking about? Fritz, it was not office papers. Got in here. Man, you mean my driver's license, man? I wasn't even driving. No, Richard Pryor used to do a joke. All right, on the wall. What wall? Find one, you know.
Yeah, I remember when he did Ben the Blacksmith. That one was funny.
Yeah, now I had a first cousin wound up joining the police there, and I know some now, but I mean, they used to be really bad. Mayor Tom Bradley, they wouldn't let him join the police until he became a licensed attorney. He went to UCLA and he ran in the Olympics, won a 400-meter race for the Olympics, got a gold medal, was a vet out of Korea, finished UCLA Law School, and then they let him become a squad car patrolman. So he and his homeboy used to patrol the neighborhood where I grew up in, and they weren't bad. I mean, big old tall Tom Bradley never lost a race down a back alley to catch somebody and whip some head, but he was frontier justice. He let them go. But he'd also have these regular meetings with the men in the community, and we'd gather at this meeting hall, and he'd tell us what the problems were, and he'd also make suggestions like, if you gentlemen want to go deal with the problem yourselves, then Officer so-and-so and I will be your witnesses that we were present during a meeting you were having. So it couldn't have possibly been you that was dealing with the problem. See, that was the way it could have been, could be some places. But then we had a lot of men because every home had a father except one or two, and I can remember one on a corner. of Normandy and 58th Place. And that woman had 14 kids by a whole bunch of baby daddies, and everybody was on welfare, and all of these kids started having babies and dropping out of junior high school. And all of the thugs and the street gangs, which in that area prior to 65, let's see, was the Dell Vikings. They would hang out there and cause trouble, and all of the men would occasionally go out and just make a point of putting a shotgun in the back of a car trunk so they could see it, maybe 3 or 4 of them at a time. So get the idea. Let's go over and talk and have a conversation. You know, we don't like what you're doing in the neighborhood, and if there's a burglar, we know where to find you.
Yeah.
You know, so that was kind of the way things went. And see, that was a peaceful black neighborhood, unlike what you find in the hood now, where there are no fathers and no men around. They're males, they got dicks, but they don't have manhood. There is a difference.
That indeed, that is true. And I think I wanted to ask you, and that's a very interesting point, but I did want to ask you, because you brought up the John Lewis thing, what were your takes on, I'm sure you've heard the story or what happened with Bill Clinton, where he took that snide at Stokely Carmichael?
Oh, see, John Lewis is a punk. He's a sissy. He's been gay his whole damn life. I know people that I mentored that went to Howard University. And if you go to Howard, you'd always go over and talk to the black congressmen and black folk. You know, used to go see Thurgood Marshall, but not Clarence Thomas, or go visit Adam Clayton Powell. And they'd go over there and they'd go up in front of John Lewis, and they say he couldn't take his eyes off our crotches. And he started talking that sissy talk with that lisp in his voice and wanting to know if you want to do tea or something. Like, yeah, no, man, I don't drink no tea. Let's get the hell out of here.
But what about Stokely?
Stokely, I met him. Yeah. He was a very intelligent brother, but he went off in this trip thing, and like he had toward the about early 70s, he had this thing about the way for the Africans to get free was to visualize this very complex multi-step program, which was, damn, man, that is bizarre. How do you expect Bush people to get a grip on that? And this complexity is not going to make things happen. Now, I don't want to criticize historic figures just to bad mouth them. I'm not bad mouthing them. I'm doing the same thing that happens when you have a history class. If you've got one in college, they analyze what the so-called historic figures have been about, what they did that was good and what was bad, so you could learn. You study history to learn its lessons, so you take them to heart, so you can guide what you're doing in the here and now, so you don't make the same mistakes. And based on your study of history, you can achieve what you're trying to achieve. So you have to understand that a lot of black history is manufactured black history that the white folk have made for you.
Yeah.
And John Lewis is one of those darlings because the white media has been controlled with that LGBTQ dynamic. And that LGBTQ dynamic is something that's the thing that's not necessarily good for anybody, because they still are carrying out a 100-year program they had. When I was on UCLA's campus in the 60s, and on other campuses around the country, they were taking oaths to dedicate themselves to take over the mainstream media, the news functions, the entertainment functions, to insinuate themselves into the political process, to have gay interactions with those political figures that could be induced to do bisexual stuff, so they would have blackmail information on them and could recruit them to the cause. And they were going to engage in a 50-year propaganda program, which they thought would basically destroy the family and the institution of marriage and suppress masculinity because they looked at all of those as negatives. They kept preaching about marriage being a form of slavery for women and how men were the cause of war. So the way to stop war was to change the way boys were raised to men so they would be more woman-like when they got grown. They wanted boys to be taught to express themselves, to emote, to cry, to shout, to let it all hang out instead of being so uptight and under self-control, which is crazy. Because the last thing you need is an emotive, out of control male who becomes one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. That's why you have so much violence and death from shootings in the hood and hallway. With white folk, they get crazy, one or two get crazy and blow up because of the way things are. They have no manhood. And in the hood, there's no manhood either.
And
your typical hood rat is not a man. He's like a lesbian in a boy's body. The lesbians and the hood rat are raised the same way. They both are raised as girls. They like nookie, but the boys got dicks and the girls got pussies. But if a fairy godfag took a magic wand and waved it over a lesbian and she woke up with a dick tomorrow, she'd be no different than your typical hood rat. They lack manhood and they do things like destroy where they live, sell poison to their neighbors, rape their neighbors, rob their neighbors, burglarize their neighbors, assault their neighbors, shoot and kill their neighbors in a suicidal thing where they're trying to do the civilian equivalent of suicide by cop. You induce somebody that is one of your neighbors to kill you and do you the favor of taking you out because you don't want to put the pistol to your own head and pull the trigger. It is what it is. So that being the case, we've got to do something about putting manhood back into the hood. One of the things that we have to do is undo this dynamic where for 50 years, Black girls have been using the safety net that the Johnson administration created as an environment to breed to. Traditionally, humans and every other animal on the planet were able to successfully raise children based on what they were doing and their success in the world. This safety net thing has created not a safety net, but an environment wherein young girls can acquire the means of sustaining themselves by having babies, not having babies based on their ability to sustain themselves. So you get babies to get a check and more babies to have a bigger check, or at least you did for a long while until they started cutting it out. But now it's a cultural habit. So we have a duplication of the dynamic on a slave plantation. A lot of young girls going around getting knocked up casually at a very early age, starting at 10, 11, 12 years old, just because it's the slave thing to do. It's part of the Black culture that came out of slavery, and it's lasted for a long time, and we have not extirpated the damn thing and gotten rid of it and gotten healthy. Now we've got BLM, Black Lesbians Matter, or bitch lesbian mania, where they're trying to raise millions of dollars with the objective of destroying the family and manhood. See, it's part of the whole thing. They insinuate themselves and they do a bait and switch. And they were talking about how to do bait and switch and discussed it and had workshops on it around campus 53 years ago. I think the first time I encountered it was 1967. That'd be 53 years ago. Yeah. I was a junior then.
Yeah. But this was, well, I was trying to ask you, Judge, I know you talked about Stokely, but I was trying to see what did you think of these comments that Bill Clinton made at the eulogy. I know you didn't watch the funeral, but this is the clip.
Say there were 2 or 3 years there where the movement went a little bit too far towards Stokely, but...
What did he say? This
Right.
one is echoing right here.
He said, well, okay, well, I'll read it to you.
I wasn't about to watch that eulogy for that enemy of the people.
He said, but there was a time when the movement was going a little bit too far towards Stokely, but in the end, John Lewis prevailed.
That's exactly what they wanted. But it wasn't Stokely. It was H. Rap Brown and Malcolm X, or Malcolm X and H. Rap Brown. Stokely, you have to understand, was more compatible to the mainstream than H. Rap Brown was. H. Rap Brown would always pull out a book of matches and say, you have the strongest political instrument in the world, a book of matches, because you can burn this MF down.
Yeah.
See, they weren't about to do that. And Ron Karenga and the US organization set him up. I was one of his bodyguards for a week that he was here was in the LA area. And we advised him, please don't have anything to do with the US organization. But Karenga came in to talk with him and everything else and buttered him up and had some of his Karenga tangs, that's what we call the US organization, act as his bodyguard. So when they took him to the airport, they slipped the carbine in his luggage. So of course he got busted with the carbine. And he already had a pending federal case, so that got him slapped into the penitentiary. But that's how they took him out. Ron Karenga did that personally. And I was in there when he was meeting with H. Rap Brown with his snake self, talking that nonsense, and talked about putting the carbine, well, not the carbine in. He was talking about, brother, we're going to take you to the airport so you don't have to worry about no transportation type problem. The US organization is extending you every courtesy.
Yeah.
They got him put in a federal penitentiary.
The one that created Kwanzaa, right?
Yeah. He did it in 1966 in Lamert Park, right off of Crenshaw. And the avowed purpose was to get black folk together during this season that white folk have, so we can co-opt it for black folks so we can discuss things with each other. But actually, it was a dodge so that Karenga's boys could record the black conversations. When we had meetings, they'd always be sitting around taking shorthand notes. Brother, why are you taking shorthand notes? Well, the Maulana needs to know what is going on in the community so he can assert his righteous control. Week later, you get hauled in by the FBI and they're quoting you exactly the things you had said at the meeting.
Had you been hauled in?
I tell you what, fool, you bring a shorthand pad out and whatever you do, or we find you with a recording device, you die. You understand?
Yeah.
I mean, we had some tense meetings. I remember one meeting we had, somebody had on a trench coat, literally with a Thompson under his coat. Another somebody had an M3 grease gun. They're both 45 caliber submachine guns. I had 2 pistols. Another somebody had 2 hand grenades and a pistol. And what was going on was the US organization was trying to take over the black portion of the minority studies program that was being set up at UCLA so Ron Karenga could teach a course at a University of California campus, to wit UCLA, in Karengaology. So we didn't do that and wound up, they assassinated John Huggins and Bunchy Carter. Bunchy was chairman of the Black Panther Party in Southern California at the time, and John Huggins was Minister of Information / Propaganda. So 4 folks from us were there. 2 of them were accessories and 2 were the gunmen. One shot John twice in the back, point blank, and the other one shot Bunchy point blank in the chest twice. Well, John, after getting fatally wounded, set up, pulled out a .357 and fired 6 shots at them running down the hallway, hit one of them in the right back on the scapula, but he kept running. And I was in the building. Me and Elaine Brown had just left out of there. We heard the gunfire as we were on the second floor. We heard some more gunfire, but that was 10 shots, not 6. And what happened is I was on the way up to my office, and some fools had kicked in my door and put 4 bullets in the back of my chair. So the way it was laid out is my back, the way I had my desk set up, was to the door, a side door rather. So it was what it was. But anyway, we got all of the guns out of the building. Elaine and Wynn Goodlow, who was dating Geronimo Pratt, got the guns out. And as I kept coming back down the stairs, I skidded down 5 of them, but kept my balance because this cop had a pistol pointed right in my face. He said, "Don't move." I said, "I ain't breathing," hands up. I managed not to fall flat on my behind as I was skidding on my heels down these stairs. Thump, 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 thump. He said, "What's going on?" And fortunately, it was a black detective. I said, "Look, they murdered 2 brothers, these 4 us fools down there. That's all I'll confess to." But let's just put it this way. I did go in before Elaine and I went back up to my office, and John was laying flat on his back with his eyes open and blood bubbling out his mouth. And there was this 357, which I'll be candid, belonged to me, so I removed it. And Bunchy was laying down on one elbow, propped up, moaning, shaking his head. And I said, "Brother, what can I do?" And he just, and he fell flat. So, I kicked in a couple of doors going back into the kitchen, and I just said, "Let's get the fuck out of here," So that's when we went up to my office to see what was happening and found the bullet holes up there. So I gave my pistol, and some other people gave the pistols, and I gave the one that I'd gotten away from John that would belong to me. I didn't want that at the damn crime scene, and she got the stuff on out of there. Yeah. Then there was one of these bootlicking Negroes like Barack Obama, who went around talking about he was going to help things out. So he went to all of these sisters' apartments where we had given guns to the sisters so they would be able to protect themselves from these us fools who were going around attacking them. And this fool gathered up about 18, 19 pistols belonging to black folk and brought them back to campus and put them in that box at the foot of the staircase. That's the kind of punk play folk do. So, sometimes when I tell some people some stuff and I listen to all of these militants we got now that ain't about nothing, they ain't got no balls, they ain't been shot at, ain't nothing happened. They want to talk about, "Yeah, you a sellout because you sitting there." I said, "No, man, all I'm doing is just for real." One of the big problems we had back in the 60s that blew everything, 3 things. One, we got infiltrated, so the organizations that we had started that were actually doing something started having more members that were snitches, agents, and police officers involved, undercover cops, than they had legitimate members. And then we had those folk that were co-opting everything, that were trying to get in on the ground floor swell of this sister thing that was going on, where they want to take over all the stuff. And then we started having them get involved in Hollywood, and they started producing these black exploitation movies starting about 1967 to get a hold of the black dollar to refinance Hollywood, which was going bankrupt because of color TV.
Right.
So the movies used to be every Thursday, every Sunday. You got 2 new movies at every theater, 3 cartoons, and some extra features. You could walk in anytime you wanted, and for the adult fare at an upscale movie theater was 50 cents. So you could sit as long as you want, sit through what you missed the first go around, or just stay there all night long. So they had this bright idea of doing black exploitation features, and you'd get one movie, you'd have to go in there on time, and they'd start charging $1.50 instead of 50 cents for one movie, and it would play as long as it kept getting an audience.
Yeah.
So they started coming up with stuff which culminated with that poisonous thing, Superfly, that started glorifying cocaine and dysfunction. And instead of afros, dashikis, and power to the people with the power fist, hey, they started walking around in bell bottoms and platform shoes and wide pimp rims and pimp mobiles, and started conking and pressing their hair again, doing that Superfly nonsense.
It was the opposite. He was the opposite of Shaft and Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song and so forth.
Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song has had not a negative in it. Like, for example, Foxy Brown. Foxy Brown took every chance for her tits to be flashed out. Pam Grier. Pam Grier did that casting couch thing to get into Hollywood. She had a little boost because she was the Ram, first cousin of the Rams, Rosie Grier, an all-pro defensive tackle.
But she's a gorgeous woman. I mean, I didn't mind looking at her.
Yeah, but she certainly gave it up enough, and she was a bartender at the sports page, and she had a reputation for doing things to certain Hollywood executives and producers behind the bar. So when they did Foxy Brown, it was kind of ridiculous. She'd be unconscious and a titty would drop out so you could see the whole thing, or she'd bend over and she'd flash, and the acting was stilted. His scripting was ridiculous. The plot line was stupid. But black folk flocked to see it because they weren't used to seeing themselves on TV or the movies. Somewhat on TV. Bill Cosby broke that. He did that thing, I Spy, in another program where he played
the teacher, the Bill Cosby show.
No, not the Cosby. I'm talking about in the 60s.
No, what I'm saying, no, he did I Spy, but he had before he had the Cosby show.
Yeah, I know, but he played somebody, like there was one scene where he had this big bet with people whether or not somebody could catch a baseball dropped off of the 40th floor of this whole hotel. So somebody had done the math into how fast the baseball would be moving, and the guys, oh, sure, I can catch you, come up. Well, okay, so they had a bet as to who could catch the ball with a glove dropped off of the building.
I never heard of that.
I forgot. But Cosby's been around for a while.
He has.
They had some novel stuff. They had Jim Brown in 100 Rifles kissing on a white woman.
Raquel Welch.
Yeah. Now, there's a thing about that. She wasn't really a white woman. See, Raquel Welch was also a fellow alumni of UCLA, and she was Hispanic.
Right.
So they had a brown person, the way they classified stuff, dealing with a black person, not a real on bona fide white woman. That was only for cosmetic and PR purposes. Raquel Welch instead of a Hispanic name. Yeah. I think she was from Argentina. I just saw a thing flash down here, all over 40 people shot in Chicago this weekend. And then another one just dropped down, said Ebony Magazine forced into bankruptcy.
Yeah, and I did want to talk about that one too. Ebony Magazine bankruptcy in Essence.
Yeah, but
we'll get to that a little bit. But
let's talk about Laurie Dykefoot, is somebody I know calls her. Somebody that works with my show, being our investigative reporters in Chicago. That's after we got a report that from a Chicago detective that one of the problems with all of that violence in Chicago is because of the dumbass mayor. Instead of taking the community development money and channeling it to responsible entities, for the Hispanic community, she gave it directly to some street gangs. And with that boxcar broken into, apparently they bought up some of the stolen weapons and resupplied, and some Hispanic street gangs were killing black boys, and some black street gangs got to killing some brown boys, and there's hell up in the hood in the barrio in Chicago thanks to that idiot mayor. One of the dumbest stunts I've seen in a long, long time. So
Yeah.
the gangs got armed up. They bought up some of the stuff that got ripped off from that boxcar full of armament sitting unguarded in a rail yard for ICU up there. IC Railroad, not ICU. Yeah, I guess a lot of folk got sent to intensive care, but yeah.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people have said nothing but negative things about Lori Lightfoot as mayor, and I'm just looking at it. I'm wondering too what's going to happen as far as Biden's vice presidential pick, because they're talking about a black woman becoming a vice presidential candidate.
Well,
Isha
he
Bottom
gave his word that his vice presidential candidate was either going to, vice presidential running mate was either going to be gay or lesbian. So if it's black, it's lesbian. And some of whom he has mentioned, they fit the bill. So
Kamala
that
Harris.
woman is an idiot. By the way, she got elected in the lowest turnout for a mayor's race in Chicago for the last 84 years, I think it was.
Right.
That's the lowest turnout in 84 years for the mayor's race in terms of voters.
Yeah. And do you think with all the stuff that's going on in Chicago, of course, Trump is talking about sending in the military and federal.
That's what he's supposed to do.
He's supposed to.
That's what Eisenhower did when one of Biden's sponsors, Faubus, got out of line down in Little Rock and started talking about he was going to defy the U.S. Supreme Court. They weren't going to let any niggers up in Little Rock High School. So he sent the 101st Airborne down there and nationalized the National Guard.
Yeah. Well, you don't think
it's nothing new. And then all of the presidents from Woodrow Wilson on, Teddy Roosevelt too, on, who sent in the troops when folk got unruly and the locals couldn't control it, from the union strikes and railroad strikes and steel strikes and all that kind of stuff like that. It's nothing new. So that's what the president's supposed to do. The Constitution makes him take an oath of office to support the Constitution, and that requires that he maintain public order in the realm, so to speak.
Yeah.
Nothing new. So he's not doing anything out of line. And the local Democratic mayors, he's truthful about that. They haven't been able to control crap. They've been letting stuff get completely out of hand in the hood.
Yeah, I think it was in Portland or it could have been Seattle, where they had actually like barricaded up areas. They were burning down the police stations and so forth.
Goddamn mayor's going to let that crap happen in their city. Well, you had some folks say, we're not letting the police up in there, and it goes on for a month. And then to show you the absurdity of it, they had a shooting. 2 people got shot, and one of them is suing the police department because they didn't respond quickly enough to him getting shot after he was trying to keep him out. If that's not, right, where are you coming from, man? Like, if you lost your mind, dude.
Yeah. That's interesting. Judge, before we begin, I want to just show someone wanted to say hello right fast. This is my father, Leon. He wanted to say
Good
hi.
afternoon, Judge.
Hello, young man. How you doing?
To meet. Oh, I'm not young, but
that young man of yours is going someplace. Congratulations. You did well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. It means a lot to me. I hope he heeds your efforts and what you're telling him. That you got to stick
and here
to
you
it.
Go. What is? Let's see. Oh yeah, 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs. Thank you, sir.
Go.
My pleasure again.
Mine, sir. Thank you for introducing me, young man.
Thank you, Judge. He was asking, he wanted to meet you because he's. I said, I want to meet the judge. Is it possible I could talk to him? I said, yeah, sure, why not? So, yeah, because we like, they watched your TV show too. My mom in particular, like when she wasn't at, if she was sick from work or so forth, she would be watching all the judge shows, whether it be Judge Joe Brown or Judge Mathis in the afternoon. I know Judge Judy. I know you don't like Judge Judy, but
Well, I know her. She's just got a very bad attitude. She's 4'6", and she had a kind of weird career that a lot of people want to get into, which is this. She had as a husband a guy named Shineland. That's a husband.
uh-huh.
Shineland went through law school. Judy had 3 kids back to back to back. And when he got out, she decided to go through law school. So she graduated at about 30 years old. Mayor Koch wanted a nice young Jewish woman to preside over a domestic court where lawyers were not allowed to practice. So he chose her, and she had been out of law school, just passed the bar, about 6 months. So she's never had a trial, bench trial, jury trial. She's never had an appeal. She's never had a big civil settlement. And at first she thought she was all this and that because she became a judge so quickly. But what she wound up finding out is that you just cut yourself off at your own knees, and you didn't get a chance to develop being a lawyer and going through learning your trade the way you were supposed to. So later on, they allowed lawyers to practice in front of her. And they didn't like it because she'd never developed judicial temperaments and she'd never observed any actual judges. And they hated to deal with her. So anytime she sniffed a shot glass of Jack Daniels, she got high. And she'd start talking about, I'll get them to have respect for me now. They didn't think much of me, but when I stand on my pocketbook, I'm 7 feet tall now. And she'd keep repeating that. Yeah. And the difference, well, let me tell you how they got me. I discovered it. The reason I got discovered was they saw me on this James Earl Ray stuff. So Judy started a year before me, and they brought me in to threaten Judy with replacements so she wouldn't ask for so much money. So I got my foot in the door. And then there was a guy named Larry Little, who was the CEO. Let's just say he had a very bad personality. He was one of these types that thought if he's a fireman, he would be more likely to be rehired as a fireman if he had some fires to put out. So he would start fires to put out. And he got fired a whole bunch of times and rehired, and he had just been fired as Warner Brothers CEO. And Aaron Spelling hired him as his CEO and fired him before 4 days was up, but he had a no-cut contract. So for 6 months, they sent him to sit at home and collect his paycheck, and Aaron Spelling basically said, to hell with this. So he had created and incorporated a new something called big ticket television, and he bought the Moesha plot from a woman named Lucy, who was CEO of CBS at the time. And then he brought in a guy named Peter Brennan on Rupert Murdoch's representation. That's somebody from Australia. So he brought in the judicial genre, since he had been the reporter over the city courts in Sydney. And he brought in Judy. And then they brought me in to threaten her with a reduction in pay if she wasn't reasonable in her request for offers. So he gave this guy charge of Moesha, then the Parkers, me and Judy, and gave him the money up front and told him this is all he was going to get. Now, what the fool did is he took a page from the producers, Mel Brooks's play and movie, And the plot of that was, as if the show flops, you can steal more money than if it's a success. So he was going to make sure I flopped, and he was embezzled the $25 million. But I wouldn't go away because I hired this beautiful sister that I had mentored. She was from Ole Miss, fine sister, and she became Miss Washington, D.C. first runner-up in Miss America. Rupert Murdoch had hired her as his personal lobbyist, and she was the youngest licensed lobbyist on Capitol Hill at one time and lobbyist for the Las Vegas Casino Owners Association. So I hired her to do the PR work, and we did it, and the show survived, and Little got fired. So it is what it is, except for the next 10 years, everything was hell because they were trying to make the books get cooked enough to conceal the 25 million in theft embezzlement from the stockholders, which is a federal crime, but that's what they do. Spelling sold big ticket to Viacom. They assigned it to Paramount, but Paramount was top heavy with friends of friends and relatives of relatives and everything else. So then they streamlined it and they brought in this guy, Roger King, who discovered Oprah and Phil and was managing Oprah's money and made all the money for her. And they gave him me and Judy, and he was a regular guy. He wasn't a Hollywood person. He's a football player, but he inherited it from his dad, who invented syndication. Well, he came to me one day and said, I like you, man. You're a real man. In fact, he used to have me talk to his grown daughters and explain the facts of life to them. So he said, they're ranking you out because you are straight like I am, and you are a real man like I try to be, and you're black. He said, I'm going to change this. So what happened is, with me getting a fair deal for the first damn time, for the last 4 years, 3 out of them, I beat Oprah every week in the ratings. I beat Phil every week in the ratings. And I was stepping on Judy's heels and sometimes beating her. But he said, they just won't play fair with you. They just got offered a new option by Nielsen on the ratings, and they're going to exercise it for Judy to keep her ahead of you, but they won't get it for you to guarantee that you don't beat her. So we weren't talking about being 1 and 2 in the court genre. We were talking about being 1 and 2 in syndication. Now it developed, and this is a message to all of those people out there who think they have to compromise being black and compromise doing what you're supposed to do to make it. Well, I have a unique distinction. For a couple of those years, I was the highest paid man in television, white or black. Right. The only person that was beating me money-wise was Judy. And it used to be in Wikipedia, if you looked it up, they said I was the second highest paid person in television behind Judy. They even verified it. But see, the only person that was making more than me sometimes, there was a man, was Leslie Moonves, who was CEO of CBS, and that was sometimes. So I made it all the way to the top. There was no man in television, white or black, making more than I was. So I decided to retire since I was over retirement age after 15 years when they wanted me to take an IOU for $28 million. And I said, you can go to hell. You know, but the bottom line is, See, but that means you don't have to go around kissing butt and compromising. You can be yourself and do what you're supposed to do and make it to the top. So, yeah. Right. So thing about it. Now, one thing I did have a battle with them every day. I had no grievance against these folk when I started 22 years ago, but I got a grievance very quick against these lesbians who every damn time we taped tried to put a knife in my back for no other reason but the fact that I was straight, and to twist it if they could because I was straight and black, and they hated black men that were straight. Trust me, they can't stand us because they think we epitomize the evil in manhood. But it's what they think, so, they declared war. So screw them. I talk back, I've got a forum and I'll say something about it. They're low down and they're evil.
Right.
Not because of what they do. I'm sure they're nice lesbians somewhere. I probably know some of them and don't know it. But the problem is that the ones that are political activists are not good. But that's like saying demogatics are crazy, but all black folk are not demogatic. And I call them demogatics because just like they used to have the Dixiecrats, well, they got the demogatics now that have infiltrated the party on the gay side, the LGBT queer side. Because just like all black folk aren't demogatics, all gay folk aren't LGBT queer.
Yeah.
They aren't into that political thing where they're trying to deal with
Right.
messing up the family and manhood.
Right. Dolce and Gabbana, the guys that make the cologne, I'll never forget, they're openly gay, but they even came out and said they were opposed to gay marriage and adoption because they said the best thing for children they thought was from a man and a woman. And Elton John, who was openly gay, I remember he had a war of words with him and criticized him for that.
Well, let me see. This whole thing, what they get out of gay marriage is nothing they couldn't get out of a contract. Now, what marriage is about, okay, there's Valley A, there's Valley B, and there's Valley C. There's Tribe A and Valley A, and there's Tribe C and Valley C. They prosper. They increase in numbers. They outgrow the sustainment that they can get from Valley A, where Tribe A is, and Valley B, C, where Tribe C is. So they expand into Valley B in the middle. Well, they start running into each other and they start killing each other off in competition for the food that's there, game and plant. And then the chief of Tribe A thinks, wait a minute. Chief of Tribe C says, wait a minute. I've got a son. He's got a daughter. Why don't we marry them and we all become one family, extended family, so we don't kill each other, so we can get to the valley on the other side of Tribe A and the valley on the other side of Tribe C that's now Tribe AC, and we can conquer everybody and take over the valleys A and C, the one in the middle B, and we can get sub A on the other side and D on the other side, and we can control the lot and keep expanding. That's what marriage is about. It builds unity. Marriage and the family are the fundamental building blocks of the current nation state. All the nation is an extended family of sorts. So these folk want to come in and deal with what? They want to overturn the cultural artifact that is supplementing and promoting the physiological evolution that has produced humans with our human breeding and child rearing strategies, and marriage being a cultural reinforcement of our mating patterns, and they want to screw it around. It doesn't make sense. It's insane.
Yeah.
That's like self-hate. I hate what I am, so I want to be something else. Well, black folk went through that in the 60s, but we came out, I'm black and I'm proud.
Right.
But instead of them saying, I'm man and I'm proud, they go, I want to be something else. And they hate what they are and they hate what they want to be. They don't like girls, but they want to try and act like girls. So they hate girls. So that's what they hate. In other words, they hate what they want to be. And they hate being a man. So they hate what they are and they hate what they want to be. Interesting thing. It's sick. And I don't care what they do, but just don't mess everybody up. If you have a problem with yourself, have a problem with yourself. Now, Ebony Magazine, I see this thing up here breaking. Ebony Magazine owners forced into bankruptcy.
Yeah,
That's Johnson Publications. Well, they brought that on themselves. They essentially became irrelevant, and they started pushing that LGBTQ stuff too. And Kim Kardashian, and why they got so fixated on Kimmy Booty, I don't know, but they did. Same with Jet Magazine. Every Jet Magazine had a feature on Kim Kardashian. It's supposed to be black oriented, and it has nothing to do. Now, that's a shame, because back in the 50s, Ebony Magazine used to be the thing, you know, and Jet used to be the weekly upkeep on what black folk were doing, and Ebony was the monthly one, and the purpose was to show black folk what they could do if they tried. Same thing with the separate organization known as the NAACP Image Awards. Now, that got sponsored by the Jewish financial backing of the NAACP. See, the NAACP was founded by two Jews, one female, one male, and one black man, W.E.B. Du Bois. The avowed purpose is to promote Jewish acceptance into America. Jews had some problems at the turn of the 19th, 20th century, and their thing was, if we sponsor the colored people, if you couldn't do it to somebody colored, you couldn't do it to somebody Jewish. So ultimately, with the guidance of Thurgood Marshall, they got up with the idea that we don't have any really effective civil rights legislation anywhere in the country, but we do have ASPCA laws, American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animal laws. So based on the theory that you couldn't do it to a dog, if you couldn't do it to a dog, you couldn't do it to a Negro, you definitely couldn't do it to a Jew. That's how civil rights advanced for the first 50 or so years of the 20th century. And then they managed to, under the tutelage of Thurgood Marshall, come up with a scheme to get Jim Crow reversed, Plessy versus Ferguson. And that separate but equal, they showed, was inherently unequal. So they got 1954 Brown v. Board of Education. That was just a headline case. There were several. And Thurgood Marshall was not the original attorney on Brown.
Was it Charles Houston?
Yeah, but Marshall managed the whole thing. He's brilliant. I met him. Great brother. And by the way, he wasn't a peaceful man. He was known for taking a baseball bat to somebody's head from time to time. See, that's the downside of the civil rights movement. You have everybody believing that what happened in civil rights was peaceful and nonviolent. And Thurgood Marshall was not a nonviolent brother. He would whip butt. Jackie Robinson, the baseball player, was not a nonviolent person.
Right.
Now, we celebrate Rosa Parks for being the chosen one out of the several black women who refused to remove themselves to the back of the bus in Alabama in the 50s, but back in the 40s, 1943 to be exact, down in Texas, where they were training the 761st Armored Regiment, they had a certain black captain. His name was Jackie Robinson, who became the baseball player. He took a cab home with a fellow officer's wife, and returning to base on a bus, they told him to move to the back of it, and he told them to go to hell. Well, he had his 1911 strapped on, so when the police and the MPs came to take him off, as somebody testified at his court-martial, he racked around into the chamber, leveled his 45 and said, some MF is going to die tonight besides me. So they court-martialed him. He got acquitted. And that's how he started playing baseball. And by the way, he never played baseball. He ran track and played football. He held the American record in the 100-yard dash and in the 220. And he was an All-American football player at halfback at UCLA. In the same backfield was Don Barksdale, the wide receiver who ran the 400 meters in the Olympics and the 440 and the high hurdles in collegiate competition, was All-American in that. And he became the first brother to play in the NBA. He played basketball for the Lakers when they were in Minnesota. Then the quarterback, tailback, UCLA started calling the position that, and because of the opposition of white teams in the 30s to having a black quarterback at a major colleges on a major college team, they called it tailback. But Kenny Washington became the first black man to play NFL for the Rams when they were in Cleveland.
Yeah.
They all wound up in LA. And interestingly enough, the man with the controlling interest in all three of them is Magic Johnson.
Right.
So congratulations to him. But that's what time it was, and he could take no mess. And I talked to Don Newcomb, who got hired at the same time but got left in the minors, along with a guy named Roy Campanolo, who was a catcher.
Right.
Don Newcomb was a pitcher. He's the only major league pitcher who's won all three awards that a pitcher can win. And I had a long conversation face-to-face with Mr. Newcomb, and he advised that Jackie Robinson had an extreme temper. And they were always worried about him busting somebody in the head. So this guy, Jack Connors, who played the rifleman, blonde-haired guy.
Chuck Connors.
Chuck Connors.
He was in Root.
With the Dodgers. So one time a pitcher deliberately hit Jackie with the ball after trying 2 times before. And Jackie started out for the mound, and Chuck Connors beat him to the mound and busted the white guy in the jaw and knocked him out. So thereafter, Chuck Connors became Jackie Robinson's bodyguard. Now, one thing Jackie Robinson did that some black folk have done when they're in the first in a business that Barack Obama certainly did not do is this. They took chances and they became the best of the best. For example, the Dodgers had not taken the pennant in some years. They were behind 2 games to 3. It was the bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. They were 1 run behind. Well, Jackie got a base hit to first. He stole second, stole third, and with the count 3 balls, 2 strikes, that's a full count on the batter, he stole home plate. Hey, it tied the game up, went into overtime, and 6 innings later, the Dodgers won the game. That tied it up, and they wound up winning the pennant because Jackie Robinson stole home with the bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, full count on the batter. Now, it doesn't get any more into being badass than that. Now, I was listening to the game with my old man. He and his buddies were gathered around one of several cars with the radios going, and everybody started cheering. But you see, in that case, before that, people were saying, we don't need him, blah, blah, blah. And when he did that, everybody said, we need some more of these black folk doing it. Damn, that was extraordinary. But you see, when Barack Obama got in, he didn't do that. He was lackadaisical, did nothing for his people, did nothing for anybody but the LGBT queer crowd. And that just goes to show you get a rich boy in there masquerading as one of the people, a mulatto from Kenya. And when I say mulatto, I mean that directly. He was half African and half Kansas white. His ancestors, he got great-great-grandfather, 2 of them who were Confederate officers trying to fight to keep slavery. One of them rode with Quantrell the guerrilla, who also had Jesse James and the younger boys in his outfit. That's his background. Stepfather, a mass murderer.
Yeah. Yeah, Jackie Robinson too. I was reading his background when he was in World War II. He was actually part of the Patton's Black Panther tank.
No, he didn't get that far. He got court-martialed, and he removed his waiver of an ankle injury, which restored him to 4F. So he got honorably discharged, and he joined the Negro Leagues. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a classmate of mine, the GOAT for the NBA, wrote a book about it. That's what he does. He writes scholarly books instead of coaching. So according to Kareem, he got court-martialed, got acquitted. He said, well, screw you. I'm revoking my waiver of my ankle condition, which got hurt playing football. So now I'm out of here. So Jackie, according to Kareem, who talked with some of his fellow soldiers, he said, what am I going to do, guys? I said, well, why don't you play with the Negro Leagues? He said, well, I don't know how to play baseball. I've never played it. He said, well, Captain, he was a captain, said, there's nobody in America faster than you from one base to the other. You hold a 100-yard dash record and the 220-yard dash record. And when you get up to bat, everybody backs up 15 feet and you can catch. Why don't you try out? So he did. That's how he stole home. He was the fastest man in America. Literally. So I talked to Don Newcomb, and Don Newcomb was only 17 when the Dodgers signed him up for the minor leagues, but I saw the brother. I thought he was in his 40s. He's an old man, but he had a beautiful woman with him on his arm. He said, yeah, old brother, old brother here still got the touch. So we talked for about 2 hours at a function. He's telling us all about Jackie Robinson.
Yeah. I just want to say shout out JC and Naz for the Cash App donation. Southeast, I think that's Southeast Dusty. Thank you. My dad had a question. What was it?
My question is, with all of the bad experiences that we have had as a people, and especially the bad experiences that our children had in the past, starting with before Tinney and Emmett Till.
I think you mean George Steinme.
Steinme and Emmett Till. Why haven't we as a people gelled around that and said, stop, that's enough motivation for me to want and warrant freedom and civil rights and equal rights in this country. And whenever we don't see that civil rights coming to us, to me, this is what I've taught my boys, the world stops. And I ask, and I have to say, wait a minute, you mean you're going to do this to me because of this? I bring it out, I point it out, and I attack it right then and there. I have no problems with calling people out, especially racist or white supremacists. So why haven't we as a people gelled around causes that were 50, 60, 100 years ago? Why? Why haven't we done that?
Here's one thing. This is back in the 70s. And this old white judge took a liking to me. He said, Lloyd Brown, you're not like the rest of you people out here. You don't shuffle and look down at the ground and crumple your hat all up and everything and get to looking like you sheepish. He said, but let me tell you something. He said, son, the problem with the black man and the white man is this. He say, I was in the Battle of the Bulls and them Krauts shot me 2 times, but I got a Mercedes-Benz sitting up in my driveway and I can't hardly drive it because my wife liked to drive it. He said, I got a Toyota sitting up in that driveway too, and I got another Nissan sitting up in the driveway. And my brother got shot 3 times by them Japanese at Iwo Jima. He was in the Marines. He say, but, them Krauts, some crazy folk, they fight real hard. And in Japanese, we used to be making fun of them, calling them bucktooth, bow leg, big, thick, glass-wearing little midgets. And then they started doing kamikaze and bonsai, and all of a sudden we started thinking of them as men, some dangerous men. And I know after I recovered from my wounds and they didn't discharge me, they were prepping me to go over there to invade Japan. And I was going, oh, hell no. But you see, white folk don't respect nobody that don't fight them, even if they lose the fight, as long as they put up a good fight. Now, we'll get with each other behind the roadhouse when we's in our early 20s and knock the crap out of each other, but we shakes hands and one of them gonna be the leader for life and the other one the follower, unless one of them smarter, and then the bigger one that whooped him say he got a lot of fight, but he's smarter than me. I'm gonna watch his back. I'm gonna follow him. He say, so look at the engines. He said, I was in the 101st. He said, I was in the 82nd Airborne.
Yeah.
101st Airborne. He said, and I jumped out of airplanes yelling Geronimo, for God's sake. He said, and they named trains and places after engines, but they don't name nothing after black folks, except maybe Martin Luther King Boulevard somewhere, or Booker T. Washington High School, and that's because he was telling all you black folk to fit in and be peaceful. He said, you ain't going to get no respect in this world till you fight. He said, not just fight for us. It's like you won't fight for yourself. He said, I got hunting dogs, and they will go out and kill anything for me, but it's for me, not for them. They ain't no wolf. I ain't messing with no wolves. He said, because wolves kill for themselves. He said, now let me give you something. He said, the relationship between black folk and white folk is kind of like that between people and dogs. He said, now don't get me wrong, I don't mean no insults. He said, that little bitty dog in my house wear a pink bow around his neck or her neck, and it get closer to my wife's nookie than I do. I ain't get that close a long time. He said, if something happened to that dog, everybody in the family be upset. They's members of the family. And we got Negroes that is members of our family. Ain't nothing gonna happen to them because they members of the family, but they kind of pet-like. And then they got, the neighborhood dogs want to come crap on your yard and you trying to chase them off. But if something happened to your family dog, everybody crying, it's a family member. He said, but then they got, let's just skip forward a little bit. He said, they got them junkyard dogs behind that chain link fence, salivating all over the place and growling. And you a damn fool if you hit that fence trying to get a car part for your jalopy with them dogs back there. He said, but you can be that kind of dog. At least you scare some white folk. And they won't mess with you. He said, but that ain't the kind of dog you supposed to be. He said, now, that kind of dog that even if it's behind the fence, you walk on the other side of the street, or hell, you walk on the other side of the block. He said, that's the kind of dog you got to be where don't nobody want to mess with you, even if they still think of you as a dog, because you got big teeth. And better still be a damn wolf. Wolves eat people. And wolves, he said this, I'll never forget this. He said, wolves don't need people to open up their kibbles and bits and feed them. They can feed themselves. Mm-hmm. He said, that's why we got no respect for black folk, is because y'all sit there like we got to still open the kibbles and bits for you. And you always come up begging for something and you wag your tail when you want something. Damn it. Be like them wolves. Look, you want some of this? Well, come on. We can give it to you. And we leave the wolves alone. And, although we done exterminated them in Yellowstone or National Park, we trying to put them back now because we admire being a wolf. Being a wolf ain't no negative thing, unless you getting your cows ate up. So that's just some white folk don't like wolves, but wolfish, wolf-like, wolf pack. We call everything that's badass wolves, like we were scared as hell in World War II, but in submarine units, we call wolf packs.
Right.
So just think about it. Now, why they want to name anything after black folk when you ain't even being good dogs except good house dogs? And you done run into folk. around here, don't mess with my niggers hunting dogs and livestock. He said, so we got to fight. And we put up with enough hell. And we get drafted or got drafted, or we sign up and we get done in. So why the hell don't we do it for ourselves? And he said, Lloyd Brown, why the hell don't y'all do this for yourself? You good fighters. I said, but why the hell don't you do it for yourself? He said, because are you afraid of this? He said, but I saw some people from that 761st Armored Regiment when I was in Ordains, and hell, they saved my ass. Wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. So I ain't got nothing against the way colored folk can fight. But if you can fight like that, damn, you can fight for yourself. And you know, you got to get it out your system, because if you don't, they just keep beating you across the head. It's like a bully that these young folk don't understand. Bully be slapping you across the head every day of your life, making hell miserable. You might as well take a chance and get a bloody lip by trying to bust him right in his nose and his mouth when he ain't looking. And that way, at least, he knows it's going to cost him something to deal with you. Even if he can whoop you, he doesn't want the problem. He's slapping you across the head because it's safe. So, you know, he was animated about it. He's dead now, but it was truth. So that's one of the problems with us. We're safe. No matter what the hell they do to us, we're not going to do anything back. And like these Black Lives Matter things, look, Pew has studied this. I've studied this. I've looked at the news feeds, and Pew says it's 6 white people to every black folk in one of these demonstrations. But I get that number if I count the press and the police. I'm looking at out of every 10 or 11 folk is 9 white people and 1 or 2 blacks. This is, well, your son and I have been talking about BLM, Black Lives Matter, and you should read their manifesto. It's called What We Believe. And if you read it, you'll see they're anti-family. They say they are for the disruption of the nuclear family. They're talking about the suppression of the cisgender preeminence and things. Cisgender is their code for straight men. They say, second paragraph from the bottom, they take a direct quote out of the manifesto for NAMBLA. That's North American Man-Boy Love Association. It's a pedophilic organization. They say in the third paragraph from the bottom, we are a queer affirming network. And then they talk about we must promote our trans brothers and sisters and submit to their leadership. And most importantly, we must do something about ending the oppression of our trans brothers who receive the most discrimination. And although they're supposed to be Black Lives Matter, based on the premise that too many black men have been killed by police, if you read the manifesto, they're for the suppression of black men, the destruction of the family, and the ending of marriage, and for pedophilia. So you're going, what the hell am I supporting? It's a bait and switch thing where I think the last count, they acknowledge they've gotten $124 million that they've raised. So that's not what we need, because it does not, I'm looking at some of the feeds coming in from the chat room, but they are not for us. And you see, what they want is for some of us to come out. So people say the black folk out there and it's Black Lives Matter, but what you're doing is you're just promoting LGBTQ. They even acknowledge, in fact, they claim that they are an affiliate, what do they put it? An associated affiliate of LGBTQIA+. And any money you give them is split either between BLM directly. Each of the 4 lesbians that founded it, they pay themselves $250,000 a year salaries, and Act Blue, which is a Democratic Party fundraising device. So you're not helping black people. But you see what we've done? We have gone for symbolism instead of the reality. So somewhere along this line, we just have to rebel. Now, I have not like Republicans. I've run for political office and gotten elected as a Democrat, but I promise you, I'm so disgusted with them right now because when they get in control these days, they aren't talking about black issues. They're talking about who gets to pee in the girls' bathroom besides the girls. So as a political tactic, it has been quite often the case in America that one ethnic group will say, okay, we've been supporting you as a party, but you haven't delivered. So we don't care. This election, we're going to vote for another party, even if we can't stand them, just to show you what happens when your water gets cut off, when your well runs dry. So they'll get to say, oh my God, we lost the colored folk. We got to bring them back. And the other side said, well, wait a minute, we hadn't counted on this. What can we do to get more of them? So maybe that's a tactic we need to do. Now, personally, I can't stand Joe Biden because I've been familiar with him for the last 53 years when Faubus and Strom Thurmond and George Wallace campaigned for him to help him get elected in Delaware. And I got really bent out of shape when in 67 he said, Negroes are animals, and if you let them into the schools, they'll make zoos out of them, and I'm not going to let my children go to schools that are zoos filled with animals. And he's been very racist. And I say this because I've had some contact with him indirectly. This law office that I was with just happened to represent they still represent Al Gore. And that's from before he became a U.S. Senator, let alone vice president. And I know there were a number of quiet meetings that he and some of the Democratic Party higher-ups used to have in our law office's library. And I know that when Biden's name came up, it was always a caution. Black people aren't going to accept him because he's just an avowed racist. So that's going back 35 years. So, I mean, he hasn't changed since. So now, Mr. I know how the Negro thinks, which he used to say often in the 60s. Somehow or another, that's supposed to be somebody that the black man ought to be looking at as a friend. I don't buy it. And I get very angry. And I'll tell you something about Trump. There are 3 former clients of mine that I had to leave when I got elected 30-some years ago to the bench. And they were looking for finance for their businesses. And they couldn't find it anywhere. So they've confided in me recently when I asked them, I said, did you ever get the financing for your business? I see you're doing well. I said, yeah. So I don't want to talk about it, but I can tell you who gave it to me. I said, who? Donald Trump. I said, when? 91, 92. I said, well, what happened? I got directed to him and he checked me out and he said, I'll give you the loan, be a term loan. So there's one condition. Say you bring me the final check for the interest and the principal and you pay it to me. So each of them tells a story that when they showed up with their checks, he said, this the full amount? He had already had his secretary bring the contract in, looked at the contract, tore the contract up, took the check, tore it up, and said, thank you for being successful. Have a great career. So he gave him the money. And in one case, it was like $500,000,
Wow.
And he financed Jesse Jackson's first 2 runs for U.S. president and gave him offices. He dated a beautiful black woman, was supposed to marry her before the current wife. They had a little squabble. So I don't have any problem with him mouthing off. It's just deeds, And I know Biden, that man's been such a racist for the last 53 years that I've kept track of him. I just couldn't stomach the idea of voting for him. So, rebel. Hell, don't be so damn predictable. But that is my suggestion for politics.
Right.
However, we just won't fight. And you know, one bad thing, I say this in the context of my grandfather being a bishop, one of my grandfathers being a bishop. Most of our would-be investment capital gets put into a collection plate, and it makes a fur coat or a bigger car or a bigger house for the pimp preachers, just like my grandfather, who pimped a lot of his congregation for a lot of money, and it doesn't do anything about establishing business. So we need to understand that a lot of the things we look to as being our salvation, you know, it isn't.
Yeah.
And I never went this Hollywood way because, hell, I was in my 50s before they discovered me. So I'll tell you one thing, too. Even if you are nice, that doesn't guarantee you being safe. You know, I was the last judge on that James Earl Ray case.
Yes.
He didn't kill King. I know for a fact, and I've got it ballistically confirmed, the bullet that they pulled out of King's body was fired from a weapon with identical ballistic characteristics to a type that the FBI got 5 of late December 1967. And the ammunition, the bullet they pull out of his back, is consistent with one of 5,000 rounds of loaded, specially loaded ammunition that the FBI got on invoice at the same time. When Bobby Kennedy ordered them to return it, late April 1968, out of the 5, they claimed they couldn't find one of them. And for some mysterious reason, a goodly portion of the ammunition was unaccounted for. And the rifling twist on the bullet they get out of King is consistent, not with Ray's rifle, but with the ones that the FBI got. So we got internal memoranda where they're discussing killing King, not because he's a civil rights leader, but for 2 specific purposes. One, they thought he might galvanize the anti-war movement like he did civil rights. And 2, they thought he would revitalize labor. And the third debate is whether he'd be more dangerous live to do one of those 2 things or both, or as a dead martyr. So they picked dead martyr.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You know, I don't usually mention this, but when I was the judge on that James Earl Ray case, I kept getting told, you better back off, something's going to happen to you. So I was at home about 3 a.m. and the way my house was is if I sat in the kitchen, I could see the den and I could see the living room. So I became aware of some noise out front and back, and I saw 2 people dressed in black in front, 3 in the backyard. And they had the bulky Kevlar plate armor on, and vest on, back balaclava and sidearms in the open. I said, are these police? I said, we wouldn't dare come up in a judge's house, sitting judge's house at 3 a.m. in the morning. I said, oh, I know what this is. This is I better watch my step type or whatever. So they carefully pried the screens out front and back. They spoke into their communications devices. They took this rubber suction cup with a tower on it and an arm with a glass cutter on it and ran it around, cut through the circle, lifted the circle out, reached in, started climbing in. I just opened up on them. They shot back. I hit 4 of them pretty badly, and one of them I hit because there was a blood trail for him. One of my old clients was the police director, so I had him over the next morning, and he wrote up a report, kept it in his secret file, checked. There were no hospital admissions and no police reports of 30-some shots getting exchanged at 3 a.m. in the morning. They'll try to kill you. So all I was doing is my job, sitting on a damn bench. And my first predecessor on this case, this guy named Preston Battle, was a fitness freak. He jogged 10 miles every day. And he was the one that took Ray's guilty plea, and he gave a press conference the day after the plea. And he said, I'm sure Ray is guilty, but I know he did not act alone. He did not act alone. So the next day, they couldn't open court because they couldn't find the judge. So they keep searching and searching, and they find him dead, supposedly of a heart attack, under his office desk after searching for 6 hours. The next day, they couldn't find him all the first day he missed court, and then the day later, they found him. So he was in perfect condition. His last physical, blood pressure was fine, heart was fine, no problems, but he turns up dead. And the medical examiner who says he died of a heart attack is the same medical examiner that said Elvis died of a heart attack, not of a drug overdose.
Well, Judge, let me ask you one last question, then I'll turn it back over to Gavin. Is there any hope in this country with the present political system? Is there any hope for the Black man to achieve equality under the present circumstances? And will he achieve it soon? Say within the next 2 years.
Let me say this. The equation is going to change. The paradigm is going to shift. In 25 to 30 years, there will no longer be a majority race in America. The largest minority will be Hispanic. Now, you've seen all this killing in Chicago.
Yes.
One of my representatives has been doing research in Chicago the last 2 weeks. He's been reporting to me. We had three Chicago detectives that come on our show, this show I have every Friday. And I've been talking to them, and they say what happened is Lori Lightfoot, the mayor, did something that they and I consider incredibly stupid. She gave the community development money not to legitimate Hispanic organizations and Black organizations. She gave the money directly to Hispanic street gangs, and they used the money to buy some of the arms stolen from this hijacked boxcar and to rearm. So all this death toll is not Black on Black crime. It is Hispanic street gangs killing Black boys and Black street gangs killing brown boys. Now, with that kind of thing in place, this paradigm that we have between Black folk and white folk is going to shift to Black folk and Hispanic folk. And if we don't start normalizing relationships with the Hispanic community, we're going to catch all kinds of hell, because the Hispanic community is not familiar with us, with the exception of places like the Puerto Rican contingent in Harlem, Spanish Harlem. So there's a good chance that we can set up some alliances and do some reconciliations with them, because if we don't, we really will catch hell. California right now is 54% Hispanic, and the Black folk are between 6 and 9% of the California population. And in certain areas, they're catching all kinds of hell from the vatos. Hey man, you Black folk, man, you don't have chance, man. None of the vatos, man, we move on to thee, man. See, but you have to set up alliances, because Black folk and Hispanics can't get along. But we have to deal with that particular adjustment, and nobody hardly is thinking that way, because the problem's going to resolve itself in 25 years, but I fear we may have a worse enemy if we don't make them friends right now.
Mm-hmm. So they're gonna.
See where I'm going with this?
Yes, I do. So they're going to become more of the oppressor than white folks to us.
If we don't set up an alliance right now.
Right, and that's going to leave. We have a whole 2 or 3 generations that are going to be lost to this situation, and through no fault of their own, but through a fault of those that be in control right now in the Black community. They're too lackadaisical, and they have no vision to see where this is going, and they have no wherewithal or means to know how to do this. They don't have the ability. I don't think they have the mentality to set up these alliances. I really don't think that. I think they feel superior to Hispanics, and it would place them in a down position if they would negotiate with Hispanics, even if it was on, you're my brother, I love you, let's work together on this. Let's work together for the betterment of both of our people. I just don't feel that they have that wherewithal to recognize the importance of drawing that particular group of people into a circle and each other working and protecting each other. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think we as Black people.
One of the ways we can get into it is Black folk have a pretty good relationship with the Puerto Rican community.
Yes.
One side of the Puerto Rican, I know this good friend, name is Aida Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 12 siblings, okay? There are 13 of them. And they range from being homeboy looking to white looking. She's kind of in the middle. Looks like a sister you might see, but then 3 of her older sisters look straight up Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, Puerto Rico brings it all together, and there's a huge Puerto Rican colony, so to speak, down in Miami. So Puerto Ricans are accepted as Hispanics because they habla español muy bien, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them have the look, and some of them look like Black folk. So within the same family, you have families that perform the integration and the cooperation thing. And I think we need to look to the Puerto Rican situation. In Harlem, for example, Spanish Harlem. Starting all the way back 100 years ago, they had the Harlem Division, which was composed in half of Puerto Ricans and the other half of American Negroes.
Mm-hmm.
And they got along. And, you know, there is a rose in Spanish Harlem, you know, the song. That's what that's all about.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do it, but we've got to work on it and take the examples that we have. And I think that's more the solution to our problem than anything else, is just to make the color line irrelevant. Because if we get allied with the Hispanics, we, guess what, become the collective majority. Just like the biggest division in the U.S. Army in World War I was the one out of Spanish Harlem, and Black Harlem, the Harlem Division. It was not 12,000 men. It was 18 at first and then 22,000.
Hmm.
So you put the two factors together and you have a majority.
Right.
So Black folk and Hispanics, if we ally, can solve each of our problems, because we become, like in parliamentary government, we become the majority coalition.
Yeah, we may double our voting power if we understand that we're working together towards the same goal. Now, the biggest problem is that there's so many of our people that are narrow-minded, that they don't see the whole picture. They don't understand that when we do this, we take over the very government that is suppressing us. we take over, and not for anything bad, for doing good. You know, we just buried a man the other day, John Lewis, and I've got my ifs and ands about him.
I don't like him either. Let's say that.
I just feel that, you know, yeah, he took a hit on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I understand that. I feel for him. But you know, what have you done since getting in Congress for 30 years? What have you stood for?
Well, the Jewish community made him posthumously an honorary citizen of Israel, and LGBT gave him a permanent honor, both for all of the legislation and help he gave in Congress. And I'm still trying to figure out what the hell he did with us. And frankly, from some young proteges of mine who went to Howard University, they tell me they went over to visit John Lewis and he couldn't take his eyes off their crotches and got to talking about, did they mind the whip? What? And he's into that sadomasochistic, or was, nonsense. He liked getting whipped on. Tell your son we ought to be recording the old folks over here. We got a good thing going on. I hope he's recording.
Boy, this is live
you
stream for
listening?
YouTube and Facebook. Yeah,
have
I was
you
listening.
been recording this? You can title this one OG's Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it automatically records.
Your daddy and I have been having a good conversation here.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. I see that.
Yeah. I didn't mean to take over.
He's a smart man.
Yeah, he needs his own YouTube channel.
No, I have desire. I have desires, Judge. You know, to at my age to get into politics, but I'm a no nonsense kind of man. You can't tell me.
We all are.
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to take foolishness from anybody, and I'm gonna call you out on it. I get that from my daddy. My daddy would hold a conversation with anybody, but the minute you start saying stuff that doesn't make sense or stuff that's foolish and stupid and want him to believe it, he would call you out. I'm the same way, because I'm going to find the facts and defend what you're saying, defend what I want to say because of the facts, not taking your word for it. And it's like, you know, it's my idea. Why should we wait for justice? Why do I have to bow down to somebody because they feel they're better than me? Why do I have to wait any time limit? There should be no time limit. You know, time is not a defender, an ally for the oppressed, as Martin Luther King said, and I agree with that. You know, forget that foolishness. Give me my freedom, the ability to go and do what I want. Don't hinder me. I'm not asking for reparations. I'm not asking for a handout. I've told both my sons, if you wait for reparations, you'll never get it. Don't wait for reparations. Just don't stand in my way. Get out of my way, because I can do more by myself than with you giving me a dime or a carton of milk or a piece of cheese or a loaf of bread. I don't need that foolishness. I don't need it.
You know what? If they ever look like they're realistically going to have a reparations thing, I'm going to buy myself an interest in an athletic shoe place so I can make a fortune. It's the folks right in there buying Air Jordans and Nike. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Oh. And when I hear all these kids on the radio and I'm listening, we want reparations. We want reparations. Now, what the hell you want reparations? First of all, the money they're going to give you is not worth a damn thing. Trump's printing all this damn money. He ain't got enough gold in Fort Knox or anywhere in the world to cover it. So the dollar is going to be worth less than $1. It's going to be worth a negative. Second of all, why would you wait for his reparations when the first thing you're going to do is go out here and spend it in a white neighborhood? That's the first thing you're going to do. You're not going to think about putting it away and let it gain interest or spending it in your black neighborhood and helping somebody else. No, you're going to go buy a Cadillac. How many black Cadillac owners you know? Or tennis shoes or this or that. The problem is with reparations, it ties you to somebody owning you. I don't want reparations. I want you I don't even want a mule in 100 acres or whatever it was. Because
40 acres.
40 acres. A mule is too damn stubborn, and I ain't going to stand in the hot sun and plow shit. That's me. I want you not to redline my districts where you're going to charge me double the interest. I want you not to cut my school programs because you feel that we're black and we don't need the same quality of education for our kids. Third of all, I don't want you to not give me a loan for money or raise my interest rate such that I'm paying more on the interest on the money than I am paying on the principal for a long time. I want you to get out of my way. Leave me alone. I can do it myself. That's the kind of man.
Yes, sir.
Foolishness. And that's why
yes, sir.
Every time Gavin tells me I spoke to Judge Joe Brown, I said, I've got to ask him a question. He said, well,
reparations.
Reparations.
You know what my position is on that?
No, sir.
I'd love to win the lottery big, but I'll be damned if I'm gonna waste my time planning around winning the lottery. You know, it ain't gonna happen.
No,
it would be nice, but you know.
But it's just like the casinos. I don't go to casinos. People say, why you don't go to casinos? I said, I work too damn hard for the money I make. I'm not going to give it to somebody on a chance that I can't win something when I know the odds are against me. I'm not doing that. But anyway, Judge, I thank you wholeheartedly from the bottom of my heart.
All right, my brother.
I thank you so much. I see my friend.
Get involved. You know why? I go around talking to these colleges. Judge, what are we going to do? I said, I'm in my 70s, for God's sake. Why are you asking an old man what the hell to do when you're 19 years old going on 20?
But
you should be scaring the devil out of me. So if they keep asking us what to do, let's go ahead and do it.
And do it. And my thing is this. If somebody asks you, what should I do? Tell them and see if they have the guts and the fortitude to go out and do it. The hard knocks you took may have not been on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but you damn sure had your knocks and you survived. And everybody, every child, every student needs to look to these elderly people and see, what did you do to overcome this? And give them that advice. That's like my son here. You know, I'm saying, son, you could be a judge. He tells me, I'm too opinionated. I say, everybody's opinionated, but you got to follow the law. That's all I got to say.
All right, young man. Good talking to you.
Very, very, very much. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Be safe, sir. Thank you.
Don't knock my microphone off.
Get out of here.
All right. Thank you, Judge, for talking to me. I appreciate it. I made his day.
He's a nice brother. I like him.
I made his month. Okay. Yeah. I won't keep you too long, Judge. I did want to talk about just a couple of things because Ellen DeGeneres, I saw that she got in trouble with this investigation and for, I guess, hostile work environment they were talking about. And you told me that.
I told you about that. Yeah. Worst experience I ever had on a set in Hollywood was on her show. They were about to cancel her show for good, for low ratings. We were both carried by KNBC4 out of New York, which was the largest TV station in the country at the time. So they asked me as a favor to come on her show as a guest since she came on right after me. I was getting 6.2s, 5.8s and stuff, and she was getting 0.19 and 0.27. So I brought her up for 2 days, but they still canceled the show. And what happened when I showed up, she was taping out of LA that particular week. And I go over to the studio and this woman starts jumping me about, why aren't you in your robe? I thought maybe she's trying to be funny. She wasn't. So she's jumping me. I said, it's hot as the devil in here. Why should I put this damn thing on? And I talked to a guy. I said, man, what is here? Because he would be cameraman on one of the cameramen on my show too. He said, Oh, Judge, man, this woman likes it 80 degrees up in here, and it's just miserable, man. She jumps everybody all the time about everything. So she came up, I told you to put that on. I said, so it wound up getting
Wait,
so
tell her
bad.
what you said. Tell everybody what you said.
I cussed her out, and I said, guys, we're out of here. So they called up KNBC4 there. Judge, please go back. Please go back. So they talked me into going back. And I said, look, you open your mouth one more goddamn time. I'm walking out of here, and I am not coming back. I'm trying to help your lame ass out to do something. So anyway, she also had a habit of not being able to keep her hands off of other women. She'd be squeezing their tits and going over and looking down their bras. Now, my last ex-wife, she's a beautiful looking woman, well endowed up here. So Ellen and her wife liked to hang out in Ojai, California, where we lived. So my ex-wife is down there. We were still married at the time. Ellen get trying to look down at her tits like, what's wrong with you? You know. So she and her husband were trying to hit up on her wife, rather. We're trying to hit up on her
Yeah,
for
Ellen's
a
the
threesome. We
husband.
just got obnoxious about the whole thing. My wife she don't take stuff. She likely ooh-wee on somebody, you know. Bam.
Right.
So I was surprised she didn't hit her. I was backed off. I just saw it at a distance. You know, I don't play that. Get away,
Yeah.
you know.
So you think she pissed off the wrong people for these reports to be coming
No,
out?
it just got atrocious. Somebody just got fed up with it and complained. See, somebody got told that they weren't going to have their work agreement renewed, and then just all to hell with this. She's
Right.
real nasty. And
She's not funny
they
either.
made her something she's not because people think she's a superstar. They don't realize that every show she's been involved with has been canceled for low ratings. I know one season they gave her 3 separate shows for that season, the same kind of show, and they kept getting canceled because of low ratings. But she was a poster child for nookie eating. So she ruined this series she was on. Came out and said, yeah, she ate nookie, you know. So there's, oh my God, she's so heroic. You know, like Bruce Jenner is supposed to be beautiful. No, he ugly as hell. Look like a damn troll in a walking head on, this is why you do not do Botox on your face. If it's ugly to begin with, it ain't good looking afterwards. And it seemed like they got this Nussbaum character. It started off as little curly-haired, hippie-looking boy. And I guess he was in seventh heaven. He was a professor on staff at Amherst, which is the British equivalent of West Point. And oh my God, all the uniforms, etc. And now he's Lynette Nussbaum, and he's an ugly, fat Lynette. Started off as a less hefty Lynette, still ugly. And he's got a voice that irritates the hell out of everybody that's heard it. So they started him off on the military channel. Then they put him on the Smithsonian channel. And then they put him on the History channel. And now they got him on the Science channel. And they just keep pushing him, pushing him, and pushing him. He's horrible. And he doesn't display much knowledge about the subject. And he's over dramatic. And his voice sounds like somebody scraping chalk across a blackboard or fingernails. You know, just like, damn, it's the program you're interested in, but you got to hit the mute button whenever they bring him on. Mute. But you see, they try to do that. And it was bound to catch up. She squeezed too many girls on the butt and peeked down too many tops and squeezed too many boobs and tried to go over and bite too many people on the neck and got too evil with too many folk. And that stuff just caught up with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is they're tired of paying her money and losing money on the shows.
I think that's what it is too, because she's talking about, I read that they're saying that she's prepared to come back, that she's not really quitting. But I mean, I'm wondering after this, who's going to be watching her?
See, they lose money on this woman.
Yeah.
They had her as MC for the Oscars, and on both occasions, that was their lowest rating well, in other words, over a 25-year period, the lowest ratings they've ever had were the 2 times she was the moderator. She's not funny. She tends to be sarcastic. And they lose money when they put her on a show because nobody wants to deal with it, and the sponsors don't want to invest anymore because they know it's a losing proposition, but they propped her up as a superstar when she's not. So somebody just said, well, you know, I hope you saved a lot of it because it's costing us money.
Yeah.
And it's not that we don't appreciate what you've done for the cause, but enough is enough.
All right. Paul Mooney even got on her because all of the dancing that she does. He said she stole that from Flip Wilson because he used to dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not original and she's not funny.
Right. But
she just ate a lot of nookie, and you know, her wife turned a blind eye because she got to spend some of the money, but you know, casting couch only goes so far when you don't have much talent once you try to jumpstart your career.
Right. Yeah. I had some people that wanted to say hello. Larry Williams said 1906. He's an alpha judge. And
yeah, Black and Gold saved my soul, and Henley with Invictus. Yes.
And my brother's an alpha too, so he's not on with us. Yeah, but a couple of people are watching. Troy, Alexander, Derek Elsie, Rhonda, Barry. Hello, guys.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to them. But before you go, Judge, I did want to ask you, we had talked before, but about what happened in June. Of course, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court had ruled that Bill Cosby's appeal would be granted. Not that the actual appeal was granted, but his right to appeal was granted. And his wife, Camille Cosby, had come on and did interviews with ABC News about the Me Too movement and so forth. And I don't know if you
actually, it was mob justice. I did not appreciate the way that judge handled that case. I thought it was incompetent, the way he lost control of his courtroom and the immediate environs of the courthouse.
Right.
Cosby got some very important rights violated. To begin with, his Fifth Amendment right was trampled on. You have a right to remain silent. So when this woman brought this civil action, his lawyers asserted the Fifth Amendment, which means if there's a civil action pending, potential criminal cases, you can't compel the defendant to make a statement. Now, in an ordinary civil action, you can. So the DA comes in and writes a letter to the court saying the district attorney general's office has no intention of prosecuting Mr. Cosby. He has no liability or jeopardy for criminal prosecution. The civil judge then properly said, well, okay, now it's just a civil case. You have to answer. So he did. Then a new DA comes in and says, we've revoked that. But you can't do that once the cat's out of the bag, once you induced him with a letter, or not you, but the office induced him with a letter saying the district attorney's office chooses not to go forward. He has immunity from this. We have no intention of prosecuting. So at that point, if he's compelled to make a statement, and then somebody tries to use that same statement, his Fifth Amendment rights have been violated like they got run over with an 18-wheeler. That isn't even subtle. That's just flat out obvious. And if the judge had any damn balls, he would have ruled accordingly, but he was too interested in the mob to do his job. Yeah. And the mob's influence through #MeToo got control of the justice process. And as a people, Black people need to be particularly vigilant against mob justice because over the many years, we have too often been the victims of mob justice.
Right. And it was also a multiple Sixth Amendment violations as far as the right to a fair trial by jury, because you had that Shepard Maxwell versus Maxwell environment there with the media. And on top of that, I think there was a juror who said we could all go home. He's guilty during voir dire. And the judge.
Well, not only that, what about the one that admitted that he got a call and his brother called him and he said, "Don't forget to vote right on the verdict so you can get that book deal."
Yeah, that is another thing.
In other words, outside influence other than the evidence and the law had something to do with it.
Yeah.
And then don't forget the women running around topless with lipstick writing convict, convict outside with the press looking at it and the jury looking out of the window down at that scene.
Right. But I mean, the state Supreme Court is only saying just the two issues of the prior DA's agreement and the 5 bad act witnesses that they allowed. So he can't even raise that.
Well, yeah, that's the whole deal.
Yeah.
You don't let something in from 51 years ago into a trial, for God's sake. You know, you're supposed to be trying the person on whether or not that case resulted in, that case deals with crime beyond a reasonable doubt. You are not supposed to be trying somebody on a proclivity. And there was nothing in there to bring in proof of other crimes. There was no ID. There was admission as it stood during that trial because of the Fifth Amendment violation. So there was no reason to let that stuff in.
Right.
So it's like that was just so bad. I mean, I just cringed. I said, damn, that's like, that is nowhere close to the way American justice is supposed to work. So the strongest thing, I think, is that Fifth Amendment thing that ought to get him a new trial absent that. But the problem is that the judge let such a media circus be made of it that there's no way to overcome the taint. So they ought to just dismiss the indictment.
Right. They ought to dismiss the indictment. I don't think he should. And then on top of that, with him being in jail, Bill Cosby is also a former veteran in the armed forces. You know, he served in the Navy, and with this COVID thing, you know, we were trying to get him released based off of that. But they let a mafia capo regime from the Bonanno crime family out in New York before they even let Bill Cosby out. He was a capo for the Bonanno crime family that was convicted.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, that's a different state. But the bottom line is, see, he's got the state appellate track, and he's got a federal track off of a habeas corpus initiated set of proceedings. One thing that is despicable is this judge took 1.5 years to do what he had 60 days to do to make sure Mr. Cosby stayed in there some considerable amount of time. See, he had 60 days to come up with his report on the proceedings as part of the appeal, and he stretched that into 1.5 years to delay things.
Yeah.
What happened with that in May should have happened 1.5 years ago.
I don't know what happened.
Where they said, we will hear the appeal.
Uh-huh.
See, that should have been processed 1.5 years ago. That's because the judge delayed that damn long in submitting his report.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he definitely has a great chance at it. You know, I don't know if you saw his wife Camille's statements, or if you heard that when she.
Oh yeah.
That. Yeah, but she went off and even said, "Forget these women."
Oh yeah, I mean you have a bunch of women that tried to jumpstart their career by sexual activity. They were bisexual. They wound up dealing with Gloria Aldred and her daughter, both of whom are avid lesbians. And what they did is they talked these bisexual women who had slowly become more lesbian than bisexual into a view of, honey, it's not your fault that your career didn't take off. You got used and abused by these horrible men. So they go take that and say, okay, I'm going to blame these men for this. And I got wronged when the reality is they got into it freely and voluntarily, but it's no longer their fault. See, this woman, how many times did she call him up on Valentine's Day? How many times did she go over to his house after she supposedly had this done? And who the hell is supposed to get bent out of shape by taking basically an antihistamine?
Right. And then on top of that, she waited a year to go to the police. But the first thing she did was try to locate a civil attorney that would handle the case. And then she contacted her brother-in-law, who's a police officer in Canada. And then in turn, that's how she got involved with the Pennsylvania Police Department. And they investigated, and of course, they didn't find anything. But, I interviewed Tom Mesereau, actually, and he said himself that was one of the worst trials he had ever been in. It was completely biased from day one. He said, I've never been a part of anything like that. And
it was horrible.
Yeah, and Tom, he does capital murder cases.
Well, let me say this. On my perspective, as a lawyer, I tried 42 first-degree murder cases where they demanded the death penalty, and I don't know how many more where they didn't. And that was when I was a lawyer. And as a judge, Memphis is one of the murder capitals in America, and we only had 10 divisions of criminal court that tried murder cases. The picture seems to have gone.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to turn your camera back on, Judge.
Okay, how do I do that?
At the bottom, usually they'll say something that says start cam or stop cam. I think yours would say start cam.
On. Your browser has lost connection to your camera. Make sure no other apps are using your camera. None are. Then refresh the page. Restart your device if this continues. How do I do this without messing everything up?
So it doesn't say start camera on your
No, I'm just getting here we go. Start camera.
Yeah, there you go. All right, there you go.
There we go. It wasn't at the bottom. It just came back up.
Oh,
I
okay.
have such horrible connectivity around here. Some idiot burnt down in one night 6 5G towers all at one time. And what happened is he sent in his manifesto. They haven't caught him yet. He said COVID-19 is caused by 5G. The 1918 flu epidemic was caused by radio, and the smallpox in the 19th century was caused by the telegraph. Now, of course, that probably meant that the aliens visited with a telegraph 5,000 years ago when the Egyptians record first instances of the smallpox. But the receptivity and the connectivity of Stone Age, man, it's slower around here, more unreliable than old time dial-up.
Right. Yeah, yes, we had Southeast Dusty said, right, Benadryl, non-drowsy. She was talking about.
I see that. Southeast Dusty.
Yeah. And one of the other things too, Judge, I think even when you have those witnesses testify, because Gloria Allred made the comment, pay me, if Bill Cosby pays $100 million, you can make this all go away. Those women that testify.
Let me tell you about that charlatan.
I'm sure that's not based to testify.
That charlatan, Gloria Allred, was at an Emmy function. I was nominated for an Emmy. Hell, enema, I don't know what the devil. I'm just saying. For an Emmy for the third time. And she was drinking that wine, and me and my wife were sitting around talking to her, and she was boasting about how she extorted celebrities into paying out large amounts of money on pain of otherwise having a complaint against them for what winds up being hashtag Me Too.
Yeah.
So some of those people she talked about that she had on the cover of what is
The
it?
New Yorker. I actually have that up now.
Whatever that magazine was, Mademoiselle or something like that. I
No, I'm gonna
recognize
tell
some
you.
of those women from being much younger when they used to come to these parties with celebrities in Hollywood way before I got involved with it. I just grew up in Los Angeles and I knew some of the people. And what was
This is
going on is, yeah, some of those, yeah, that picture. I recognize some of them. And they'd come to these parties that black celebrities would have, and they'd come in see-through, no bra, and in 15 minutes they'd be topless, bare-chested, and in an hour they'd be down to G-string or no panties at all, and then stark naked. And you'd walk down the hallway to go to the bathroom, and she would pop out the closet, wiping her mouth, holding somebody's hand who was zipping his pants up, or you'd catch screwing somebody on everybody else's coat in the bedroom where the coats were left, and they would be helping themselves to the coke and the other drugs and the alcohol liberally. And then you'd go
right.
back in a couple of weeks or a week, or if it was Friday, go back to another party Saturday. You're out there on a 2-week vacation, and there they'd be again, back again. It was
Right.
sex, drugs, and rock and roll, sex, drugs, and basketball, football, sex, drugs, and movie, sex, drugs, and TV, sex, drugs, and celebrity. It was the same thing. So they were a bunch of bisexual girls who would also be up in there entertaining everybody by lip locking and embracing and tongue kissing with women to put on a show for everyone at the party. So they just switched from being bisexual to basically lesbian with failed careers that didn't sufficiently get jump started by being freebie sex objects. And you can always say no and walk out. They
Yeah.
didn't.
And I got Beverly Johnson up for a reason. I was talking to this with some friends once. Beverly Johnson, own manager, actually said that she was lying. She and Janice Dickinson actually have the same manager at one point. And he actually, I don't know if you knew this, Judge, but back in the 90s, Beverly Johnson did a movie with Bill Cosby called The Media Man, with that Robert Townsend directed.
Yeah, well, they still have the casting couch, but basically it's girl on girl and boy on boy. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I don't know her.
Hello, yeah, we black cut out for a time.
Was they?
Beverly Johnson?
I don't know her.
That's Beverly Johnson?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 40 years, 40 some years.
Yeah, there's no telling, but I won't keep you much further, Judge. I appreciate talking with you. But I do have one more last question. Is there going to be a hot topics with Judge Joe Brown? Are you going to do a TV show, get back on TV?
No, I'm blackballed. They won't have me back. Even if I could boost this sorry ratings, but they won't have me back because I know, one, they don't want me with too big a forum to open my mouth about the $25 million they embezzled from the show. I don't think they want me to upset their LGBT queer agenda. And I don't think they want me to upset the apple cart any more than I am able to about what they do to poison the nation with their ongoing propaganda campaign to promote the agenda of destroying the family destroying marriage, and emasculating the country. I don't think they want me to have any bigger forum than I can manage on my own. But, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, Judge, I appreciate it. But, you know, you can come here on this platform. This is a new platform now for everybody. So,
yeah, well, you call me. You know, I just had a thing today. My sister got on me about me letting stuff accumulate that she had to take out. So she got mad at me. You have to listen to sis, baby sis, you know, type thing. So, yeah, what it is. Actually, she's my niece, but
how many brothers?
I don't have any brothers, and she technically is my niece.
Okay.
Her father is my older, now deceased half brother.
All right. Yeah.
So, you know, it makes an easier explanation.
Understood. Well, thank you, Judge. Thank you again. We appreciate you being on here. Southeast Dusty says, thank you, Gavin, and thanks to the judge. Graciously appreciate it. You're welcome. She also made a comment. She said, beyond the valley of the dogs types, referring to those women you were describing at the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, before we go, let me add one thing. I told you about it. My show hadn't been a month and a half old when I was at a function at the Beverly Hilton Hotel that the studio gave. And I'm a bachelor. I'm 50-something, and I'm dancing with all these pretty movie stars. You know, I dance, you know, I have a few moves and conversation. And I ran into this sister that I hit it off with. So we're sitting at the table. She gets up to go to the ladies' room. She comes back a little while later and says, do you know that guy over there, tall guy in a gray suit? I said, yeah. He's the CEO of the outfit. I said, well, he offered me $2,000 in cash if I would say you tried to feel on me. I said, what? He had a little paper he wanted me to sign. I said, oh, man, here we go. So I wasn't any young somebody. I was 50 years old, and I'd been dealing with murderers and thieves and con men in my business, okay? We went around and talked to the rest of the women that we could find, and they all gave us written statements that this had happened to them too. 2.5 months in, I get this complaint from, well, they sent this letter. It was styled 23 proud lesbians. That's why they styled themselves. They complained about the indignity of having to work under a straight black male when there were so many nice gay black men. Notice men, male, and what it got juxtaposed with. All right. Yeah. One woman said she'd been in the business 30 years and she'd never had to work for a straight black male, but there were so many nice gay black men. Why couldn't she be assigned to one of them? So they objected to working with me because I looked them in the eye and I had a deep voice and I was pretentious because I wore custom suits and ties and shirts and everything. And that was insulting to them, and they wanted me banished from the lot and all this other stuff. So we had a meeting at Human Resources. When I showed up, I said, thank you very much. I've got someplace to go. Well, bye, Judge. I was legal counsel. Where is he going? Where he pleases. And the rest of you are going to start a 2-week course on Title VII requirements, EEOC. And see, that went on. And every single day I showed up to tape for 15 years, I had to put up with this bull coming out of these lesbians. It wasn't even the gay boys. They were just doing their thing. But these lesbians had everybody half-stepping because they made it so you had to walk on eggshells because they were always complaining. And at one point, I just said, look, everybody drop dead. We're stopping this until this stops. We're no more production until this mess stops. And you get these people off of this set. It is nobody in here high enough on the food train to fire me now. So go to hell, stop it. And that had to happen. So, I mean, It was just miserable. I mean, it's like, what is their point except they hate men so badly that they just use me as somebody to attack? But you see, they were used to black men rolling over or not being sophisticated enough to recognize what was going on. So a lot of times, I had to set them up. I told you about this woman that handled public relations to save the show when they were trying to kill it. Well, we decided to create a fictional woman. So we filed some affidavits saying we were going to do that. And then we filed another set of affidavits saying what the name was. Then a set of affidavits, who we talked to and what the game was. And then sure enough, these clowns come up with a letter that was signed with a horrible complaint against me by this fictitious woman. So I'm over there again up with the studio exec. So I just said, bring this stuff over from human resources. They did, and the letters were sealed. I said, break the seals and see what they say. And the guy wound up getting canned, that particular CEO, because he was going along with the game that this fictitious woman was giving him a complaint. He drafted the thing and signed it himself. See, there's no woman that exists. This is a setup. And we stated it was our intention to get them to run with the false and fictitious character so that we could trap them to show it was a setup. But see, Cosby didn't have that kind of background in criminal law to be able to peep that kind of thing. So I survived. But anyway, I just say that is hashtag me too. You have to watch that because there's a lot of fraud going on in it.
Yeah, Dick Gregory talked once about that, how some woman was in his hotel room performing up in New York. I guess he was walking up there and he saw all the women's clothing and so forth, and he went back downstairs to talk to the people at the front desk. And somehow or another, they were able, I guess, looking at it, they were able to clock in who went into the room and so forth. And there was one time that was out, it wasn't, obviously the hotel crew or anything like that. And it wasn't him because he was out performing. So who went in there? And, I think that was one of the ways they tried to get him too on some sexual harassment stuff or sexual assault thing, because I know that Dick Gregory was under FBI surveillance, as even Bill Cosby was under federal surveillance. He was audited twice by the IRS in 1 year. He was on Nixon's most enemies list as well. So all of that stuff was going on there.
Well, yeah. What I used to do, see, you have a bodyguard.
Yeah.
So if you have a woman that you have known for years coming up to see you, you have your bodyguard talk to the woman and say, do you intend to spend the night with the judge? Yeah, well, he'll sign this that you are. And he'd happily sign it. Do you intend to have sex? Yeah, I intend to have sex. Is it going to get kinky? Yeah, it's going to get kinky. So they couldn't complain. And I'd always take pictures. So if the woman is voluntarily stripped butt naked laying on the bed, I'd say, hold this sign, and I'd write one on some of the stationery. I want you to have it, have me, so they couldn't come back at you later on. But yeah, right. They'd throw themselves at you.
It's like that Dave Chappelle skit where they signed the waiver before they.
Yeah, exactly. He knew what it had happened to him too. See, so yeah, for real, signed the waiver. Now, when I got married. And quite frankly, my wife looked as good as any woman in Hollywood and better than most of them. Whole lot better than most of them. So couldn't anybody say anything to me because I said, you see my wife over there, and why the hell would I want you?
Right.
So they'd back off. It's like they'd approach
Yeah.
you like, who sent you?
They had a case with some football players, I think, where they tried to use as a defense. I don't know if the case is still ongoing, but they recorded and of course these were black players. This was a white woman, but they recorded her admitting that she was doing this voluntarily. And somehow or another, even after this occurred, she still pressed rape charges on them. And I think they tried to admit that into evidence, but I don't know what the status of the case was at the end, but I remember hearing that. I think this was very recent too.
Well, I'm not surprised too much. See, elected judges have to want to get reelected because that's their job and they pay the bills. So some of them want to get elected by trying to please what they think is the biggest mass audience, and some of them try to get reelected by just doing what's right.
Right.
Anyway, let me get out of here. It's
Yeah.
going on 4 o'clock.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Judge. I appreciate it, and we welcome you to come back anytime. And I talk to you later. And
all right, young man, take it easy. And I haven't forgot your letter.
Okay, I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, thank you. And guys, this has been another episode of Gavin Richard Presents. We were in here for almost 4 hours now. I know my dad took over the talking duties there for about a good 40 minutes of it. But I think I've done enough for today. And I will see you guys in the next video. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button right now. Like, share this video, subscribe to the channels, GBoo2786, Gavin Richard, and on Facebook here. We got more interviews that are going to be coming just like this. You're going to enjoy it. But thank y'all. I see Ajike has been in here for the longest. You've been here for a while, sister. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Please also donate to the channel, Gavin Richard Esquire, and at Google Pay. You guys be safe, be blessed. I'm going to take a break right now. I got to use the bathroom. Too much information. But all right, I'll see y'all. Y'all know how it is when you've been sitting here for almost 4 hours. All right. I got to go. Peace.